UFOs Part 8, an overview with Marty Garza. You are listening to Brothers of the Serpent podcast.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, angels and demons and monsters and serpents. This is Brothers of the Serpent podcast, and we are coming to you not live from the 10x10x10 Tangent Cube of Science, nestled amongst the dusty bones of an ancient seabed high atop the Edwards Plateau. And this is a bonus episode. We didn't think we were going to be doing a show in between Christmas and New Year's, but here we are. And so what happened?
How's it going, everybody?
What happened is we talked to Marty after the last episode about coming back, and I was like, why don't you just come back next week, or we can do it remotely and have a conversation about all this material that has been presented in the past 3 UFO episodes, both of the history of unlikely coincidences and this last one, Deconstructing Demons. I was like, why don't you come back on and we'll just do a conversation about this stuff? And he agreed, and here he is. So thanks for being back here, buddy.
What's up, dude?
I'm back.
I'm back. And this time there's no reading. We're just going to talk about all this stuff and have a hopefully a clarifying conversation, and possibly not. Maybe we'll all come out of this more ignorant than we were before, which is usually what happens on the show.
Par for the course here.
That's right.
Straight talk.
So do we have any agricultural stuff? Nothing?
No.
Not really. We've been bottling or labeling.
Yeah.
That's the only thing we've been doing.
Built a little frame for Pump House.
Yeah.
about
That's
it.
right. What about rock and roll? We got rock and roll stuff?
Booked in January every weekend except the first weekend to do the mix down at Hidden Creek
So
Studios.
you're doing long weekends in January?
Friday, Saturday, Sunday. That's right.
12-hour days or what? 14-hour days?
Who knows? We'll see. Technically, it's an 8-hour day that we're paying for.
Yeah.
But, you know.
Are you going to be able to handle 3 8-hour days with Ty? Like,
Yeah.
yeah?
It's not a problem.
It's not a problem.
Yeah, it's not a problem.
Well, he doesn't listen anymore, so we can talk all the shit about it.
That's true. God, that dirty guy. I'm offended.
All right, well, let's tackle some space weather news from spaceweather.com. Big sunspot turns towards Earth. One of the biggest sunspots of solar cycle 25 is facing Earth. AR2916 has multiple dark cores larger than Earth and sprawls more than 140,000 kilometers from end to end. These dimensions make it an easy target for backyard solar telescopes. Wow. And yeah, so they have on the website, they have an image of the sun, current sun, and you can see it. It's a huge complex, like, it looks like 3 large dark spots in a line there below the solar equatorial region. Also, there's a disconnection event in Comet Leonard. So something unusual is happening to the tail of Comet Leonard. It is being disconnected. And they say to see the break, scroll down on this picture taken. So I recommend everybody go to the website and look at this picture. It's beautiful. It's a very long photo where you see the comet and its tail, and it's set vertically.
So it's like a specific type of gas, like, ran out or something?
Well,
maybe?
yeah, let's see. So it says about halfway down the picture, a rupture appears. This is a disconnection event. A piece of Comet Leonard's tail has been pinched off and is being carried away by the solar wind. For this, we can blame space weather. CMEs hitting comets can cause magnetic reconnection in comet tails, sometimes ripping them off entirely. NASA's Stereo A spacecraft watched this happen to Comet Encke in April 2007. Comet Leonard has not experienced a known CME impact, but solar wind streams can do the same thing. At least 2 high-speed streams have hit the comet in recent weeks, enough to explain the turmoil. Not every knot in Leonard's tail is a disconnection event. Comet Leonard has flared in brightness 3 times since December 15th, a sign of possible fragmentation in the comet's core. Much of the tail is doubtless an imprint of Comet Leonard's rapid-fire instabilities. So whatever is happening, get ready for more. Comet Leonard is approaching the sun for a 0.61 AU close approach on January 3rd. Wow. Increasing heat and proximity to solar storms could spark new outbursts and ruptures. Astronomers in the southern hemisphere will have the best view as the comet glides through the constellation Microscopium. I think that's how to say that. So yeah. But I really say, like, people should go check out this photograph. It's a beautiful, high detail image, and you can see the disconnected part. It's interesting because the tail itself, I think what we're seeing here is this disconnected part is actually closer to us. It's no longer in line with the rest of the tail. It's been pulled out of the tail. It's either behind it or in front of it. But you can see how it's a completely separate structure now. It's really cool looking.
Got slapped with a magnet.
That's right. So current conditions, solar wind speed 461.3 kilometers per second. The density is 9.2 protons per cubic centimeters. Current sunspot number is 95. Neutron count is 8.9% above the space age average. And the KP index is 3, which is rated as, that's the top end of the quiet range, but the 24-hour max was 4, which is the bottom end of the unsettled or stormy range. So there you go.
And in today's news bits, we have the James Webb Telescope and the James Webb Telescope and the James Webb Telescope. And in other news, they found 70 rogue planets. And there's probably a lot more now that they know that how to find them and that they're
all this data. Isn't that what
that
part of what that was for? The telescope?
They didn't use the telescope.
Oh, okay.
They're using some other data from other telescopes or something. But yeah, they're like Jupiter-sized planets just hanging out in this one region of space with no star.
Wow.
70 of them. And they're like, there's probably a lot more. Like 120 or more than that.
Wow.
What was the other thing? Oh, yeah. There's water in the Marianas Trench on Mars.
Oh, yes. I did see some of that.
40% of the dust in the bottom. So it's like moisture in the dust.
Yeah.
It's not like a pool of water. But they think it's probably frozen.
I'm sure it's frozen.
But they don't know. Yeah.
Well,
anyway, that thing's like 5 miles deep or something.
Yeah, it's huge. Yeah. Largest known canyon, I think, in the solar system.
Huh. And also there's a James Webb Telescope. That's what my newsfeed looked like, pretty much. It's just like...
Yeah.
I mean, that's exciting, but I didn't read any of the stories. And it's like, I just wait for the telescope to do something.
Let's yeah. I got a crypto update. Bitcoin currently $51,227.54, and Ethereum is at $4,081.48. Oh, there you go. I keep forgetting to do the crypto updates.
How dare you?
Yeah, I know. So we got emails to tackle.
We got a one-up box.
Yeah, and we have a one-up box. Let's do that first.
This box. This box.
So there were notes in the box. There is a postscript, which I'll read after the script, and then there is a typewritten note, and then there are 2 pages of Egyptian hieroglyphs, which are that's what I'm going to read. I'm going to read the Egyptian hieroglyph version. Practicing my translation here. Green things and hallucinations, Snake Brothers. I wish to add my discordant hiss of approval to those sibilant voices that have expressed their enjoyment and appreciation of your attempts to educate and explore. I have greatly appreciated hearing you in this time of isolation, to know that there are others out there with a wide and diverse range of interests and knowledge, and most importantly, questions. I have been gleefully playing, not really working, my way through your backlist of episodes. Enclosed, please find some pyramids for you to wear until you can go experience them in person. Is that what we got?
Yeah, these are...
Oh, but...
Let's see. This is why I was thinking, I was like, man, how long has this box
How long has this been
sitting in the post
so
office?
They're bracelets and necklaces. Cool.
Yeah, these are really nice, too. They're like...
Also, a collection of Ouroboros that you can decorate your 10 by 10 by 10 tangent cube or use to play snake toss, and some old bones.
Look at this.
The snakes. Look at all the snakes.
And these bones. This box is, yeah.
A pair of pentagon necklaces for the snake wife and snake mom.
Yeah.
Is that what this is? No, these are pyramids.
No, I think these.
Okay. Some
stones,
snake. What is this? Joss stick holders.
Yeah, these. They're like, they're like incense holders. There was incense
for when you get incensed about a topic. Oh yes. Some etched mugs for you to enjoy those brews.
Now this, check this out.
Ah, look at that. Oh man, that is cool.
Yeah, these are awesome. There was 5 of
That's
them.
nice.
I only brought one.
We'll
of
have
them
to fill those with beer for the second segment.
Oh, I got it. I don't have any beer.
Oh no.
Out.
And whatever else I found around the place that I thought I could ditch, gift to you.
These. There's a bunch of these.
Yeah. There's plushies and man, the box is full of stuff, but there's tons of snakes in there. I greatly appreciate your time, effort, thoughts, comedy, and research from Asper. And she also sends a PS. While listening to the podcast, I took notes of things I thought you might be interested in, but unfortunately, I did not mark down which podcast they came from. So yeah, she mentions check out the nursery rhyme book, The Annotated Mother Goose, about precession. Remember using a toy called a spirograph? Is that it? Spirograph.
Yeah, dude, those were awesome.
Yeah, with
I think we got one for Soul.
Yeah, with revolving cogged circle within a circle to form a multi-petal image. Just expand the circles to have 12,000 cogs and really big. 12,000 gear teeth. 25,920 gear teeth. The average person's thumb's width at arm's length is approximately 1 degree, I guess, in comparison to the sky. Is that what she's saying? That's what
Yeah. What was it again? I'm sorry.
1 degree is the average person's thumb width at arm's length.
I think so. Yeah.
The sun traverses the width of the average palm in 1 hour.
Cool.
That's cool.
That's good.
Look up Kay Gardner for information about emotional responses to tones and music. About the green flash at sunset, it's also called St. Michael's flash and is associated with the jinn in the Middle East and is thought to be a blessing, especially for future travel.
Huh.
See The Descent of Woman by Elaine Morgan for discussion about the physiological changes in humans related to the species going into the ocean for some time. Like the hippos, only we left again. Okay.
That's cool.
Not sure what that one's relating to, but like what, we went back into the water for a while and then came back out.
Yeah.
All right, that was hard to translate from these Egyptian hieroglyphs, but here we have the postscript, which is will be slightly easier because this one's handwritten. So, postscript. Well, I have procrastinated long enough that not only have you announced your trip to Egypt, gone on it, and returned, so hopefully I will actually get my slithering backside, if we snakes had them, in gear to get this in the mail before the year changes too. Love your cast. Always have. Always will. From Asper. Thank you.
Thank you. And you
so
did
much.
it. And
Yeah.
we actually did a show before the end of the year.
That's right. It not only did you get it here before the end of the year, but we did a show before the end of the year where it got on it. These bracelets are cool.
Oh, yeah.
So now Soul has plenty of toy snakes.
That's
right. Is that the idea?
Yeah.
We can also give them to stash to
When
scare.
Laura was opening the box, he was like, oh! He's like trying to get in there. She's like, get out of there.
Get out of this box.
It's not yours yet.
Yeah.
It's fine.
All right. Thank you so much. And if you want to send us a one-up box, the best way to get the address is either email me. That's not really a good way. The other really good way is in the Discord. There is a command, a bot command. If you just do, let's see, !, the number 1, and then up box. And you just type that out in the Discord and hit enter. The bot will respond with the addresses.
Okay. One up box.
That's
Got it.
right. The number 1.
What's the Discord?
It is a large chat server. Which I
heard it's pretty cool.
I recently added a channel called Channel Descriptions. So that's helpful. When you first join the Discord, there's like 90 channels, and lots of them have inside joke names. So it can be slightly overwhelming and confusing. Well, right up at the top now, there's Channel Descriptions, and you can just go through and read where I've described to the best of my knowledge what these channels are for. I don't know what they're all for either, so. And I did add that if you go to the UFOs and UFOs and Encounters, is that what it's called?
Yes, I believe so.
Or UFOs and something. It's the UFOs channel in the Discord. I was like, you can talk about UFOs here, or you can argue with Marty. That's pretty much what it's for. All right. emails. Let's tackle some emails. This is from, let's see, I'm pretty sure this is, so we got a bunch of books. We got a bunch of books to read. All these emails are books, pretty much. People tend to write books when they're talking about UFOs. What do you think?
Yeah, I've heard about that.
So this is from Zamog from I know he's in the Discord. Lewis, he says, UFOs in Arizona, Brothers of the Serpent. Zamog of the Hill People, skirping in. During my military and aerospace career, I have seen many things that might be taken as UFOs or even the finger of God. I find it very plausible that the Phoenix sighting could have been flares. I do believe that there are ETs out there somewhere, but just not here, just not now. Why would ET fly so brazenly, as purported, with the lights on over Phoenix one night, while ET apparently tries to remain hidden the rest of the time? Why would ET be so casual and careless? Did ET accidentally turn off the cloaking device and activate the lights while fumbling for the intergalactic doobie roach that it just dropped because it was distracted by a tailing VW in the rearview mirror? Were the ETs arguing over the mistake while they drifted aimlessly over a major metropolitan area? Perhaps ET just wanted to go home. Perhaps I have no clue as to what ET would be doing or even contemplating, as I am merely an over-caffeinated skirptard sucking my Java out of a soda straw. So yeah, I'm glad you added that at the end there, because saying why would ET do X is a question that none of us can answer, and it also assumes that it's ET.
Okay,
it doesn't,
where do I start?
Well, yeah, there's a lot more. I just wanted
If
to
it
say.
doesn't make sense, then you don't understand their motives.
That's right. That's right. I'm just saying that when you say ET, it doesn't have to be ET for it to also have not been flares.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Continue.
Yeah. Arizona is host to the Berry Goldwater Range and numerous military air bases. Local and regional utilize it. I agree. I don't think there is a state in the United States that isn't host to numerous military bases. They're everywhere. People are like, these always happen around military bases. Like, yeah, because military bases are everywhere, right? Would you think that's relatively correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
There are military bases in every state, for sure.
And in and around every major city, just about, is there a major city that doesn't have a military base somewhere in it?
I'm sure there is.
Okay. Yeah, probably. But I bet you that most of them do. San Antonio has like 3, right? But, people say, well, San Antonio is a big military area. But yes, it's not a huge city. It has multiple military bases. Okay. In addition to our planes, air forces from around the world schedule access to the Great American Airspace and Bombing Range time there, and mostly stage from Luke Air Force Base in the Phoenix suburb of Glendale. I believe that this activity is responsible for most of the UAP sighting in southwest and central Arizona. I say this as I have spent countless hours under the night sky out at the BGW range supporting military aviation activities. At times, there are assorted nimble fighter jets, big jet bombers, and all different sizes and types of propeller planes, helicopters, and drones, and even surveillance blimps, tilt-rotor transports, and groups of high-altitude parachutists operating in and around that airspace at night. Sometimes they are in the airspace by the dozens, and sometimes they are deploying various types of ordnances, such as including missile decoys like magnesium flares and clusters of aluminum chaff that deploy and descend in linear V patterns. Often, the military flight profiles and maneuvering differ greatly from that of commercial or private aircraft, with much of it occurring at night, and all that activity leaves footprints that many may witness. However, nearly all those witnesses would simply not be privy to what is actually flying in the night sky above, beyond the normal air traffic which they are aware of. Most, including myself, would tend to rationalize between what they perceive as fact and what they believe in. Unfortunately, the majority of people today seem to have been preconditioned to expect to see certain types of aliens and UFOs doing certain things through the repetitive pop culture carpet bombardment of the past 50 years. To me, an A-10 or an F-16 at 25,000 feet accidentally punching off a string of high-intensity accidentally punching off a string of high-intensity magnesium anti-heat-seeking missile flares, which would then disperse and descend in a linear V pattern, offers a more plausible solution than a UFO aimlessly cruising over Phoenix with the lights on. More plausible to who? Again, this is the plausibility thing is, are you saying this is more plausible because that happens more often than UFOs do? I mean, where is the plausibility here? Not to skirp your skirp here, but let me keep going. Perhaps the pilot forgot to safe the automated aircraft survivability equipment, ASE, prior to leaving the BGW range. So safe is all capitalized, so I assume it's an acronym for something. SAFE. Oh, or maybe he just forgot to put it on safe. Or there was a malfunction and the system remained armed, and when stimulated, it responded by dispensing the flares. When the ASE, or aircraft survivability equipment, is activated and armed, it is not uncommon for a source of intense near IR or infrared energy, such as sun glint off water or glass, other than the launching of an actual missile, to trigger the automated ASE into dispensing the flares. These ASE suites are generally activated only while operating in high threat areas or within designated training areas. A string of these high-intensity flares descending in a linear V pattern from a 25,000-foot height in the western desert evening sky over a metropolitan area would be a very uncommon sight. Generally activated and armed only over suitable ranges or in war zones, these flares are typically deployed at altitudes much lower than 25,000 feet, given the nature of the threat. Man-portable, heat-seeking anti-aircraft missiles. It would be rare to see them deployed at higher altitudes outside of the bigger ranges like Nellis, where they practice aerial combat with heat-seeking missiles. And even at Nellis, it would be rare to see them popping off at night, since most of the air-to-air training is conducted during the day. Maybe the ETs and their advanced technology are as fallible as our high-tech military, or maybe just the Big Lebowski. These types of sightings remind me of the UFO hotspot in the Florida Panhandle in the mid-'80s that were featured on AM radio and cable TV documentaries. Oddly enough, the area of the supposed frequent UFO sightings was near the Air Force's Hulbert Field. As one in the know, Hulbert Field is an Air Force Special Operations base, operating numerous types of night vision-equipped special mission aircraft, including a gamut of helicopters, and in the 80s they were training aggressively, and mostly at night, and the Cold War was a little tense then. The documentary ended off being about red-necked, light beer-chugging types sitting on foldable lawn furniture, unwittingly watching the navigation lights of the maneuvering special operations helicopters and other aircraft in the training areas and landing pattern around Hulbert Field. Their commentary was laced with priceless observations like, "See 'em flashing red and green. Just hanging there. See there, they just done moved up and done stopped again." Okay. No airplane can do that. So I don't begrudge the UFO watchers, but rather the folks that sensationalized and presented their observations. Perhaps it was not me, or it was me and not appreciating the producer's wry sense of humor, or maybe it was an early cable TV foray into menticide by the secret world government. Maybe it was the Brotherhood of the Serpent honing their craft as they prepared to unleash the internet upon the world. There is definitely some weird and unexplainable stuff going on, but a lot of it appears reasonably explainable. While I have seen much that could be interpreted as UFOs, I have yet to personally witness or see any documented evidence that has made me think ET is here for real. But I do realize that may be a result of my own limited experience and personal biases, my personal soda straw of scriptitude. I believe that most of the UAPs are explainable, and the small percentage that are not are more likely of a terrestrial origin than true ETs, perhaps ancient, perhaps multidimensional, aka Skinwalker Ranch. Snakes from ZMOG. So there you go.
Excuse me. There are, I guess, let's see. The Pentagon stated in 2013 that there are around 5,000 bases total, with around 600 of them overseas. So there's 4,400 bases in the United States.
Right. So everything is near an Air Force base.
Due to the sensitive nature of the subject, there is no comprehensive list of detailed information on the exact number or location of all bases, stations, and installations, as it involves highly classified information. The total number of foreign sites for installations and facilities that are either in active use and service or may be activated and operated and by American military personnel and allies is at just over 1,000. That's foreign. So
All right. Let me paraphrase.
Around 5,000 bases.
Let me
Yeah, that's a lot.
paraphrase the email.
So, yeah, but I mean, the Phoenix Light is a huge case, right?
But basically what he said, there are parts I agree with and there are parts I take exception to. But basically what he said is birds fly, therefore all things in the air are birds.
Right.
Okay. First of all, understand.
Or he's saying that anything you see in the air is most likely a bird, right?
The object observed over Phoenix by the majority of the people that reported it was first seen in Henderson, Nevada, traveling towards Phoenix. Then most of the credible witnesses in Phoenix that observed the object saw it at low altitude and gave very detailed descriptions of the shape and structure. It wasn't lights in the sky. That's why, that's the parts that I agree with is when he says that most things that are observed are mundane. I agree. Yeah. That's true. But you can't apply a one-size-fits-all solution to everything.
Yeah.
In other words, and there were flares dropped in Phoenix.
Yeah.
As a diversionary tactic.
Possibly.
Because most likely what was seen in Phoenix was a top secret military aircraft.
Yeah.
Most likely. It was not flares per se. In other words, that's why I say he's kind of right, but not exactly. I do not believe that the object seen in Phoenix was a UFO. I think it was a military craft.
Well, it was a UFO, but it was a...
Right, but it was a terrestrial built asset. But... So just write it off.
So then the question is valid, like, why would they fly a top secret thing over a major metropolitan area? Was it an accident? Was it an error?
That's
because when you ask why would ET do that, well, the answer is no one knows, and why would you even ask that question?
That's a multifaceted question. Certain aspects of it, I would say, are done as a psyop. Other aspects are probably accidental.
Yeah.
There may have been, potentially there could have been malfunction that caused them to fly lower over a certain area. But then here's another aspect of this is that this type of sighting has historical precedence that goes back over a century. So again, these things were seen extensively in the Hudson Valley area in the early 80s. They were studied by NIDS, the National Institute of Discovery Science. They spent a great deal of time pursuing the potential of it being some type of advanced technology. We touched on it in the last episode that was around the time of the development of the B-2. So there were theories that there was a top secret version of the secret B-2 that had anti-gravity technology employed. I don't believe...
There's also the Aurora project, right?
Well, that's high speed. That's a different...
That's high speed. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
There was something else. There was an aircraft that was referred to as Q, just the letter Q, that was supposed to be the replacement of the SR-71.
Stands for quick.
And
there were a lot of anonymous people that were watching it.
According to the leaked documents and statements about it, it was supposed to have like almost unfathomable capabilities.
Yeah.
But they said it was going to be so expensive they could not justify the investment.
I don't buy that.
Something took over for the SR-71, some type of unmanned platform.
I agree,
so there is some, but that would be high speed most likely.
And
well, look,
very high altitude, right?
I can explain why this craft flew over a major city. They were testing the new cloaking device,
and it didn't work.
It failed.
Right, and then there's another aspect. There is another aspect about the true, because this is a question that's been asked forever. There's all sorts. There are like the default questions that skeptics raise. Why would they do this and why would they do that? And they, one of them is very often is why would they put lights all over their craft so that they can be seen?
Yeah,
that's exactly why they have. In my opinion, that is they're making a statement.
They're trying to be seen,
right? Exactly.
In those instances,
yes.
Yeah.
In some cases, that's the psyop side. And in other cases, that's the phenomenon doing it.
Yeah.
But we'll delve into that in more detail here in a few minutes as we get into more of the discussion of the last episode.
Well, I do think it's important, and we should probably do this at some point, is you should come out here sometime with some prepared stuff and let's cover the big cases. Just overviews.
Well, that's one of the points that I wanted to hit.
Because you've been saying, like, I don't want to cover the ones that everybody's heard about, but not everybody has heard about them.
Yeah, I guess
I hadn't heard them.
I as I said at the beginning of the last episode, that I feel that this is, the listeners of this podcast tend to be the more esoteric types. They don't want the pedestrian level discussion. They don't want, or is everybody
Screw what they want.
Everybody's heard, the discussions of Roswell and the Phoenix Lights, and but
they haven't heard that discussion here.
Well, yeah, I mean, we would probably have a different take as we just did on the Phoenix Lights, for example.
Like, everybody's heard the pyramids too, but like, we're constantly talking about them and trying to bring up questions, and that's the point.
And I tried to bring up cases earlier in episodes, 1, 2, 3, of cases that maybe are a little lesser known, but
those
very similar to the types referred to in these bigger cases.
Yeah.
And we get into those gray areas where, and that's why I tend to use those more historical events, because it's harder applying the analogy about the 3-dimensional graph. And using the historical precedent as a measuring stick for the significance of the sightings, because as you get more contemporary, it becomes increasingly easy to write these things off as military tech,
secret tech. Yeah.
And I said this, and I hate being a skirp to believers, but I don't believe too much,
Yeah.
The lights in the sky type sightings mean very little to me. I almost ignore them, because it could be anything, especially today when a drone can do, like, I'm talking like a drone you buy at a hobby store or, at a toy store.
Yeah.
Can do incredible things in the dark.
Yep.
I mean, they're very fast. They have lights on them, so you can tell which is the front and which is the back as you're flying them.
Yeah, I have one.
So, right.
You can do crazy stuff with
right.
it. Yeah.
So lights in the sky don't mean much. They have very little. They carry very little weight. But when there are other phenomena associated with them, that's when they begin to take significance. So this has come up in the Discord recently, and I tell people I don't want to discount, because it's possible that that the way they're relaying the information is maybe not descriptive enough, and I don't want to totally discount that it's just an airplane but maybe you need to be more conscious of other things, like be objective and be analytical, and look at it and go, what are all the things that it could be, and then after that, how is it affecting you? How do you feel?
Yeah.
What is your thought process that's going by? Because very often there are
consciousness-related
things. There are effects, correct, and that might tell you when there's something legitimately strange going on.
So going back to the email, I think what he's trying to give is a possible interpretation. I understand that. I wasn't there. I don't know, but I do recall the witness reports, and they didn't see just lights. They saw structured craft. Right.
There, see, I
but
think
people are like, well, they saw a bunch of lights in a strange line, and they decided it was a structured
because
craft.
Everybody sees the video on all the news reports and everything because it's sensational. So they think that
the video is what people
entire
saw.
Case is hung on the hook of these lights in the sky, and that is not
that's not
what
happened.
Actually representative of what people describe.
Right. The video was of the flares.
Most likely, yes. But that's not what most of the witnesses were reporting.
Right, exactly.
And there were hundreds of them.
Yeah.
It's sort of condescending to say, oh, these idiots couldn't tell the difference between a big, giant structured craft that blotted out the sky over their head. I'm talking like a couple of 100 feet over their head.
Yeah.
That blotted out the stars.
Hey, man, a lot of these hillbilly ranchers, they are pilots.
Yeah, exactly.
That's true.
Yeah, and ranchers are tend to be good observers too.
Yeah.
They're used to seeing night skies and stuff, you know. I just don't like.
And they're also used to looking at things from very far away. When you have a big ranch, you know, you're looking at things from a distance.
Often it's the city people, commenting on how little the people in the country know when they actually have no concept of what the night sky looks like.
City people seeing Venus because they've never seen a star in the sky.
Exactly.
Let's trash city people some more.
City people. All you people who live in the city. All right. Well, still, it was a good email. Thanks for your input. I agree that, and I think what Marty is doing is taking the middle here. He's saying, no, it wasn't just flares, but it probably was a secret military project, right?
Correct.
And that's kind of where I stand on the Phoenix. I wonder what that thing was and where it is and what they use it for and why has it been deployed? Or is it like I've always wondered?
It's part of the big psyop that they're running.
Well, I've always wondered this, like with people who really take all of the UFO sightings. You're not doing that. Marty's not doing this, but I'm saying people who say all these UFO sightings, the ones that are anomalous, can be explained as military craft. I'm like, well, where are they? In the theaters of war? You know, like are these things being used, or are we just sitting on them? And people are like, oh yeah, they're waiting for when they really need it. Well, okay, so they've been spending trillions of dollars building gigantic, massively advanced craft that nobody's ever seen, and we're still flying around with regular planes in war. Why? I don't understand that. I'm not saying it isn't happening. I'm just saying that's strange to me. Like you use these things, you know, like we've had top secret craft that are spy planes. They got used immediately, right? Now it was years and years and years, decades sometimes before the public knew of the existence of these craft, but they were being used all the time.
There is evidence of certain types of craft out there that are not acknowledged. So I wouldn't.
But a giant flying wing.
I mean, for example, just to give you an example of something
slowly
that's fairly, and I think I've referred to this on the podcast at some point, but just a more mundane example of this is that going back to the first Gulf War, when the F-117...
The first what?
First Gulf War.
Gulf War, okay.
Right,
yeah.
Back in what that would have been in 91.
I thought you said girl 4.
Yeah, you see, that's why I don't read my own text. So during the Gulf War, the F-117s were responsible, and keep in mind there were only a handful. I'm going to say, I don't remember the number exactly, but it was like 14 of them or something like that. It was less than 25. But,
okay.
That were used in the Gulf War, but they were responsible for like almost 70% of all the sorties and all the destruction that took place, and like the numbers didn't quite add up. Well, in more recent, discussions, it was semi-disclosed that there was something else that was flying along with the F-117s. Some other platform that's even stealthier than the F-117s that was contemporary. The development was contemporary to the F-117, but it did it in a different way. And it was designed to be more, if people may remember the concept of the wild weasel, which was used during, like in Korea and Vietnam, where they would use F-4s that would go in, purposely trying to get the radar systems to turn on to track them, because that way they could track the radar systems and they could launch missiles to try to knock out the radar systems. Well, this platform that was flying alongside the F-117s was designed to designate that when, instead of exposing a whole flight of F-117s, this thing would go in, and when the radars would turn on, it could track multiple radars and laser designate all of them so that all the F-117s could send missiles to knock out the radars, but you're only exposing one aircraft instead of all of them. And then that thing was so stealthy that it could then switch it off and disappear. So it was... And the patches from the pilots that flew during the Gulf War said team stealth. And you know how there's always little things hidden in the patches?
Oh,
yeah, there's some other... And I've heard vague descriptions of what this... It's a very unique looking aircraft. It looks nothing like an F-117, but it was seen in the desert in Nevada.
So you're giving an example of a secret platform.
So in other words, that's just an example. That was a very long-winded example.
That's great. Yeah, that's really cool. Of other platforms that are not only in service, they've probably
they may not even be in service anymore. They came and went, and we don't know about them.
And we still don't know about
right.
them. Yeah.
So there are, I would say, I could probably state definitively that there are platforms that have flown or are flying that we're the general public is unaware
I completely agree with that.
There
and
is.
U2 did that, right? It flew for years before
it
we
flew
knew
for a little while until one got shot down over Russia.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Then, the A-12, which was the CIA version of the SR-71, the predecessor, it flew for quite a while before it was ever acknowledged. Like a decade or so.
I read a long. There was a crash of one. It crashed on its way in, and they sent a bunch of people out to look for the debris and clean up the mess. And I found out about this because I was looking into missing people. And there was one guy, and I was trying to find out this is another long-winded explanation, but this is really cool. But I was trying to find accounts from people who do the searches for missing people. I wanted to read things from their perspective, like search and rescue people. Have they written about their experiences? So I was looking for that. And I found a website from a blog from a guy who does that. He's been on multiple search and rescues. And he also does his own little projects. Little projects that aren't involved in necessarily some of his projects involve this guy went missing 20 years ago, never been found, and he still goes out into the area where he missed, and he's got maps of all the places that have been searched, and he's like, okay, I'm going to look here next time, and then So I was reading that kind of stuff, and one of the things he went to look for was pieces of this A-12 that crashed in the Nevada desert somewhere, and it was the same thing. He's like, this was all super secret. It's still super secret. Nobody's exactly clear where it crashed or whatever, but he's got all this search and rescue experience. So he put together all these weird little hints and stuff, and he drew out a map, and then he went out there and he found pieces of the plane.
Yeah.
And he found the pilot's sunglasses.
Oh, wow.
So it's that's how I found out. I was like, what? The CIA had their own version of the SR.
Yeah, it was all titanium skinned version.
Yes,
whereas the SR-71 was composite.
He found titanium. That's what he was after, was the titanium bits.
It was faster and could fly higher than the SR-71.
Yeah, so something went super seriously wrong with this one. It ran out of fuel. I can't remember exactly what it was, but and then the pilot ejected and the seat failed and the parachute didn't come out. And the plane cartwheeled through the desert and just left this long trail of debris. And then people went out there and cleaned it all up. And he found both the pilot's impact site where the seat fell, and hit the ground with him strapped to it. Found the dude's aviators in the dirt.
Jesus.
I read a story. This was back in the 90s.
They actually wear aviators while they're flying?
He said they must have been in his...
Okay.
Yeah, because they're practically in space.
Yeah, they're
100,000 feet. So. There was a story about it, because...
We got to take a break.
I know.
We're at 43 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
Real quick, there's a story about an A-12 that went in and did a surveillance run over foreign territory, and some missiles were launched at it to try to take it out. And because keep in mind that the statistics that were given, the data the speed is cruising speed. They don't ever tell us what the
top speed is. Yeah,
we don't know what it's really capable of. Well, they got this A-12 went in on this one mission, and all of a sudden they got an alert for an emergency landing, and this thing was coming in, and the ground crew said that when it landed that the wings were melted.
Oh, because
they said they were like,
so fast?
How fast was that thing going that it melted the leading edge of the wings?
Wow.
Yeah, pretty cool story.
Because it was the guy decided to outrun the missiles.
To outrun the missiles.
Yeah.
Yep.
So the missiles get fired up. He's like, just outruns
probably
them.
Who knows? It was probably a Mach 4 dash. Maybe more. Who knows?
All right, that's great. Great stories. Let's take a break.
Yeah, trying to get to the next email.
Yeah, that we tackled one email.
We got it. It's done.
Yeah.
Yeah, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Brothers of the Serpent Podcast, a freeform conversation here with Marty. Finally, we strong-armed him into no notes. It's been great so far.
Yeah.
Looking forward to what's to come. So you got another email? How many emails?
I have been saving these UFO emails.
Okay, cool.
So I think I had 7 marked. They're not all as
Man,
long.
we might do 2 shows.
Yeah, they're not all as long and complicated as that one. So this one is from Sean. Yeah, he sent this in October. So what's up, Snake Brothers? I've been caught up for a while, and the UFO episodes with Marty have got me getting deep into UFO stuff again. First time since I was a boy 10 years ago, and it has gotten so complicated it's hard to find solid ground. Are they time travelers, angels, demons, custodians, tricksters, all of the above? Who knows? I don't. Since I've been caught up, I've started re-listening to the catalog with the brain expansion I've gotten so far. Somehow, I now have more, at least 35% by my guess, but I feel the episodes hit different with a more broad understanding of the subjects you tackle. Have you heard reports of stacked brain expansion from multiple listens? If not, I am your gerbil. Hearing the evolution of your opinions while maintaining your modesty and genuineness is a huge reason I follow you guys. It's hard to find people in this niche who don't claim to know everything but ask questions instead. Thank you for all the hard work, all the hours of enjoyment, and the sense of community I feel, although I'm not super active in the Discord. I don't know if you guys have ever played Metal Gear Solid series games, but if so,
Solid Snake.
I'll try some cheesy references in my next email. Snakes! P.S. Going through the Gods of Eden episodes again, and it would be awesome to have Laura back more regularly. Yeah, so
that's cool. Very kind. Thank you.
Yeah, let's tackle the. So Laura, it would be, yes, I agree. She's got a baby right now. That makes it tough. But maybe in the future when the baby is more independent and can be so for her to be there for all those Gods of Eden episodes, we had to set up like 2 months worth of babysitting for that night, right? So that she could come and do the podcast with us without having to worry about Soul. But now she's got 2 kids but yes, I'd love to have her back as well. As for Metal Gear Solid, I think the only one I played was 5, the Phantom Pain.
I never played any of them. We just our whole group of friends started saying Solid Snake all the time about everything.
That's
and
right.
then everything started getting snake names after that. It was just, this was long before the podcast.
Yeah.
We actually have a friend we still refer to as Pizza Snake.
For my part,
Because we went to get pizza.
Yeah.
And we were all saying snake so much. And like he tried to order a snake pizza. And then, we finally got the pizzas, and we were sitting down and continuing to say snake way too many times. And they got on the loudspeaker where they normally announce that your order's ready, and they were like, well, the table over there and blah, 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 please stop saying snake.
well, for my part, if after you listen to the UFO episodes, if you feel like you're confused, all I can say is mission accomplished.
Yeah, that's right. That's the point. Yeah, that's a great answer. Okay. So this is another book from Ivan. Greetings, Snake Bros. Ivan from New Zealand here. Once again, I felt inspired to don my finest butt flap, fire up my trusty steam-powered typewriter, and offer some thoughts for your consideration. After listening to your most interesting and enjoyable conversation with Ben from Uncharted X on episode 216, there were a few areas of interest I wanted to comment on. Panspermia. Until recently, I wasn't aware that the theory goes back as far as it does. So here's a short history. Lord Kelvin introduced panspermia theory in 1871 at the British Society for the Advancement of Science. Swedish scientist Svante Arrhenius, don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, introduced a different version in 1908. Kelvin's version involved lithopanspermia, the transfer of life inside rocks, such as meteoroids. Arrhenius' version involved radion panspermia, the transport of microorganisms either naked or on small dust grains by radiation pressure of the sun. There was little additional progress in the field until Crick and Orgel's work prompted renewed interest. These were the guys that proposed the theory of directed panspermia in 1971. Francis Crick, of course, was the co-discoverer of DNA. The following quote indicates what surely motivated him to pursue such a speculative idea. Quote, An honest man, armed with all the knowledge available to us now, could only state that in some sense, the origin of life appears at the moment to be almost a miracle. So many are the conditions which would have had to have been satisfied to get it going, unquote. What's interesting is that 50 years later, we are no closer to solving the origin of life mystery. However, from what I have read, Panspermia is not a viable model for transferring life. Without getting too deep into the weeds, essentially for it to work, it's a 4-part process. Launch from an inhabited planet's surface, transit through interplanetary and or interstellar space, arrive at a habitable planet, colonization of the habitable planet. There are issues with viability and survivability of any organic material through every step of that process. And finally, viruses were mentioned as part of the Panspermia conversation. But here's the issue. It's true that only viruses are small enough to have modest protection in grains while they are being accelerated by sunlight. However, there are 2 severe problems with viruses riding along on small grains. First, upon reaching a planet and entering its atmosphere, the grains and their viral contents will completely burn up. That's not true. Viruses are constantly raining down on our planet. They don't have to come in that fast. Second, viruses require a host to reproduce. This is true. By themselves, they are not going to spread life to another planet. Okay, fine-tuning. This wasn't explicitly addressed during the discussion, but the issue of the fine-tuning of the universe and the Earth for life is extremely relevant. There are many well-established examples of fine-tuning which are widely accepted even by scientists who are generally hostile to theism and design. For instance, Stephen Hawking has stated, "The remarkable fact is that the values of these numbers, the constants of physics, seem to have been very finely adjusted to make possible the development of life." Likewise, the Earth has hundreds of factors which contribute to its ability to support life. Obviously, I can't list them all here, but to just give 4 examples, the Earth's relationship to the sun is favorable. The Earth's atmospheric conditions are favorable. The Earth's terrestrial nature is favorable. The Earth's relationship to the moon is favorable. Okay, aliens and life elsewhere in the universe. It is entirely reasonable and understandable why people think the universe is a big place. We've discovered all these exoplanets, so there has to be life elsewhere in the universe. However, that kind of thinking is based on faulty reasoning. It would be like saying, if I buy 2 lottery tickets, then I will double my chances of winning the lottery. But of course, that's not the case because the probabilities don't work like that. In fact, it's overwhelmingly more probable that I will lose than I will win. So getting back to the probabilities of alien life, it's entirely possible that there is life elsewhere in the universe, but it's logically incoherent to argue from the starting point we know to be a fact. We have no idea how life got started on Earth to then conclude there must be life elsewhere in the universe. There is simply no evidential basis for reaching that conclusion, considering the starting premise. Unfortunately, that kind of sloppy thinking permeates the media and scientific coverage of the subject as well. I can recall times when a new exoplanet discovery is being covered, someone will say, the ingredients for life are there, or words to that effect. But what does that even mean? To use an analogy, if I have all the ingredients for making a chocolate cake and I leave them on my kitchen bench, it doesn't matter how long I wait, a chocolate cake will not magically appear all by itself. I have to actually make it from the ingredients and bake it in the oven to get the result. Whether we are talking about life on Earth or elsewhere, it always circles back to the same origin of life mystery. To quote Nobel Prize-winning biologist Jack Szostak? Is that how you say it? Szostak. It is virtually impossible to imagine how a cell's machines, which are mostly protein-based catalysts called enzymes, could have formed spontaneously as life first arose from non-living matter. Thus, explaining how life began entails a serious paradox. Yeah, that's really interesting. According to linguist Noam Chomsky, there are 2 kinds of issues in science. There are problems and mysteries. Problems are amenable to being solved after the acquisition of more knowledge, whereas mysteries continue to deepen the more they are investigated. In the latter category, Chomsky includes his own area of expertise, the origin of human language. To quote the man himself, human language appears to be a unique phenomenon without significant analog in the animal world. If this is so, it is quite senseless to raise the problem of explaining the evolution of human language from more primitive systems of communication that appear at lower levels of intellectual capacity. There is no reason to suppose that the gaps are bridgeable. Also in the mysteries category are the origin of life and human consciousness. Okay, I've rambled on long enough. Thanks so much for the show, guys. Take care. And P.S., I have a new tagline for your show. The more you listen, the less you know. Snacks!
I know we've touched on that. The underlying point he's trying to make there before. And this boils down to data. And I even emailed, you read a letter that I wrote about that, about the discovery of what seemed to be craft on another planet, and it turns out that they were just random events or whatever. But the point is that living organisms like man it's very difficult to believe that they just spontaneously came to be. The code for what we are is written into our DNA.
Yeah.
Every cell is programmed to perform its task. That doesn't happen, in my opinion, does not happen randomly. There's a blueprint. It's following a blueprint.
Yep.
So I think I get that part of his analogy, but to say that that's not possible anywhere else or unlikely anywhere else is like, well, if that blueprint exists, where did it come from? There's every bit as much chance that it exists out there as it would be here, and there's just nothing preventing that from happening.
Yeah, so I would tackle the things he brought, because all of those great points. But I would say, broadly speaking, the whole favorable to life is favorable to what we know as life.
Exactly.
Number one, whether or not there's completely different kinds of life out there, we have no idea. We can speculate, but so that's one aspect. Another aspect is at least when we talk to Dr. Chandra Wickramasinghe about panspermia and his ideas, he did talk about the sharing of like the blueprints you're talking, the genetic material, life working and evolving on a particular planet that's conducive to life, whatever that life may be, and whatever those conditions need to be. It doesn't necessarily have to be what we understand as life, but it evolves, and then at some point it gets ejected back out into space by some events. Obviously, most of the life that gets ejected out into space in those events is going to die due to the energy of the ejection. It's just that what he's saying is that these events happen enough on a long enough time scale that some of it doesn't die, and it can then be propagated elsewhere. But he also talked about,
well, not just die, but it isn't destroyed.
Right, it's not destroyed.
Because they're finding, I think he pointed this out too. It's like they've been studying meteorites, and they're finding precursors.
Yeah.
What they call precursors to life, like these specific proteins or, whatever
like
they
fragments of life.
Yeah, fragments of like complex molecules that are part of what make up life forms, right?
As we know them,
we don't know them in any natural context other than in life.
Yeah.
And here they are inside these meteorites.
Right.
So the idea is that even bits and pieces of these complex materials, they're not life themselves.
Yeah.
No, but they do provide some of the building blocks, like the ingredients for the cake. And I agree with the analogy. They're like, you still have to put it together and bake it.
It's more like, fitting with his analogy there of the cake, it's more like every one of the fragments you just described could contain the recipe. So recipe is being, when there's one of these events and it's ejected out there, that recipe is effectively the code for, if we're talking like engineering, a CNC program or whatever to be able to build that component.
Yeah, but again, using his analogy, if blueprints fell from space and landed somewhere on Earth, it doesn't result in a house. You just have blueprints,
But
slightly burned, laying on the ground.
But they're carried within the building blocks of that life.
Yeah. Again, I'm saying I see his point. Like, I think it's more complex than that.
Well, we've talked about the possibility.
Wickramasinghe also talked about these gigantic molecular clouds that are out there harboring life as a safe harbor, right? Because the molecular clouds themselves have complex chemistry going on inside them. They're warmed by multiple stars. they're also dense enough to block and to stop a lot of the hard radiation that's in deep space, so that in the interiors of the molecular clouds, you have both a warm and a relatively safe radioactive environment. And it's going to still be a lot of radiation, which can result in lots of changes.
Yeah, but even then, I mean, like those extremophiles, they've found bacteria growing inside Chernobyl.
Yeah, that's right.
That actually live off of the radiation.
Yeah, that's right. And that kind of bacteria, if you took it out of that environment, it would die if it's living off the radiation, right? It's like suddenly it doesn't have any food, right? So yes, I think the idea of panspermia is not necessarily that fragile planet-bound life can survive in space. It's that life can survive everywhere.
Life is much more robust in general
That's right.
than the planet-bound stuff that we're used to looking at.
Right. Yeah.
But also, we've discussed the possibility that, consciousness is involved here.
Right.
In a fundamental way with the development of life. Like, is that a possibility? I think so.
Yeah, and that's how you tackle the problems of like tuning, the fine tuning stuff.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, one possible explanation is that consciousness is in some way as fundamental.
And that's what and Wickramasinghe was saying, that life may be itself fundamental to the nature of the universe.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Which was that was like, whoa.
Yeah, it's been here since the start.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's helping make the rules, not
the other way around.
coming about because of the rules. Yeah.
Cool ideas, but yeah, agreed too that we don't, we're still looking out there. We're looking at exoplanets. We're looking at their conditions, and we're trying to figure out better ways to do that. And that may not be the only way to look for life, but that's one way to do it.
Yeah.
And we keep learning more, so maybe someday they'll figure some stuff out. But I mean, I don't think you can just make conclusions based on the data that we have. But there are cool ideas to consider that could be possible. I don't really follow the reasoning that in the email that's like, well, the universe is a big place, but because life is here, that it's probably everywhere else. And he's saying, no, that's not logical.
What he's saying is that's the part of it that's not logical is because we don't know how it started here. How can we say it started anywhere else? I don't think that's the right way to look at it.
That's what I'm saying. I don't really follow.
I think what people are saying is because it is here, it's probably elsewhere, regardless of how it starts.
The probability is that it's also elsewhere.
Yeah, and that's part of the Copernican principle. This has been built into astronomical and cosmological thinking for over 100 years, which is that Earth isn't special. So if Earth isn't special, it's not in a special place. The solar system isn't in a special place. Copernicus didn't say this, but it's called the Copernican principle because it's an expansion of the idea that the universe isn't geocentric, right? Because like first you have the geocentric model that Earth is here and then everything, including the sun, is going around it. Well, the heliocentric model puts Earth going around the sun, which means that Earth isn't a center of this system. So you can kind of expand that principle to all of cosmology, to the entire universe, and say Earth isn't in a special place. It isn't the center of anything. And so this applies in to me, very interesting ways in physics, like the idea of the overall homogeneity of the universe, like the assumption that in any direction you care to look out in the universe, you're going to see basically, roughly speaking, the same stuff you see if you look in any other direction. Now, clearly, things that are close by, when the closer you get to us, the more non-homogeneous it gets.
Right.
But what we're talking about are universal distances here from Earth, where we're looking from, all the way out to the very edge of the visible universe that we can see. When you take that entire line and all the stuff that's in that line, in any other direction you care to look, you're basically going to get roughly the same amount of stuff in the same rough configurations. There are going to be minor differences, but it's in general homogeneous. Like I think of this as like a bed of gravel, right? It's every piece of rock is a different shape than every other rock, but they're all roughly the same size. Think of a Japanese rock garden. the gravel that they rake and make it all beautiful. Every single one of those rocks is not the same shape as every other rock, but they're all roughly the same. And everywhere you look, you see homogeneity in the differences, which is kind of cool. That's what makes it interesting looking, right? Yeah. They're not all the same, but they are all the same at the same time. So this is the idea of anywhere in the universe you care to look, it should look roughly the same as the rest of the universe.
When you zoom in and you get real detailed, you're like, oh, that one's a cigarette butt.
Yeah.
Right. You know, and to follow up on Kyle's comment,
way different than those other rocks.
Kyle's comment on consciousness.
I think the Japanese guy would be very mad if I dropped a cigarette butt in his rock garden. Zen garden.
Consciousness could theoretically have manifested or alchemically created a method of locomotion in a physical plane.
Yeah.
If consciousness is non-physical and it needed to interact in a physical plane, because that ties the reason I say that is because that ties directly to some of the things we discussed in episode 213 when we were talking about Jack Parsons and him creating, the Collins Elite talking about his workings and alchemically creating objects, physical objects. That's sort of that's a topic that will be expanded upon, but that's kind of the premise that there could be some other intelligence at play that has the ability to manifest or alchemically create.
Yeah, this is the thing.
Physical form.
I keep, like, whenever we talk about this type of thing, the thing that's the way I reason through this, if you believe in the spirit or the idea of a spirit realm or that, like, consciousness is non-local, like that it's not just a function of the materials in your brain, that it's actually something on its own, then you have to accept the idea that spirits can interact with the physical realm. Because if you think that your consciousness is a spirit, then it's already doing it. I mean, it's like your spirit is somehow controlling your body. Like, obviously there's physical aspects to, the nervous system and all that kind of stuff, but what's telling you to get up and walk, or grab your cup of coffee and take a sip or whatever. There's something
that starts out with an intention.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
And then suddenly all this stuff happens.
Right. So the idea that, like, if you're going to start with the premise that there are spirits, well then, and that spirits are conscious, or that consciousness is spiritual, then you're accepting in that idea that they interact with physical matter.
That's effectively what I was getting at on the whole Enoch discussion of the Watchers being able to be non-physical spirits, but yet still be able to take physical form in order to be able to breed with the sons of men. Mm-hmm. So
the question is,
daughters of men. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Do they is
some of them might have done this?
Yeah. Now we're talking impossible.
Is the spirit directing matter in such a way to build life forms? You go at it from that angle, or is it that spirits are connecting with already existing physical matter, and through because we as humans use our bodies to manipulate matter. So that's a secondary effect.
We could be proof of it. If we have consciousness and we're still physical.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, there's some kind of interaction.
There's an interaction taking place at some level that we can't observe right now. Mm-hmm. With our current
it's a principle we don't understand exactly.
Yeah, and because science hasn't completely figured out what consciousness is, then the door is still open, right, for this to be a possibility. But
so going back to the email, I think that there were two. So with the problem of, like, people saying, well, life is here, so it could be elsewhere, but he's saying that's illogical because we don't know how life got started here. I think based on his later his example of Chomsky saying that human language is like we can't use animal communication,
Right.
and then assume that somewhere a gap was bridged.
Yeah.
The gaps may not be bridgeable. So I think that's kind of what he's trying to say. He's saying that because we don't understand how life got started here, we can't say that gap got bridged anywhere else. It may be a singular occurrence.
I gotcha. Yeah. Okay.
So that's a great point, and it's totally possible. It would be.
Well, we know for a fact that materials that were created because of life have been thrown off of Earth into the universe.
That's right. We do know that.
So now whatever happens to them when they get wherever they're going, we don't know.
Yeah. Materials that have been thrown off of Mars have ended up here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, we know that takes place. But what I was going to say is that, to me, philosophically speaking, both of these things are equally fascinating.
Where did the Anunnaki come from?
It's like either the Earth is special or it isn't. Both of them are equally interesting in different ways.
Yeah.
If the Earth is actually special in the sense that, like, all this life got started here, and not only that, but it developed into what we think of as intelligent life. Like, we set ourselves aside from the animal kingdom in the way that we manipulate our environment, like the animals don't. And we call that a result of intelligence. The fact that we build things, technological things, like other animals build stuff too, but there's a clear difference. The way we adapt is not the same way that the animal kingdom adapts to stuff. They adapt themselves. We adapt to everything around us. Yeah. There's a difference. So if that's actually special to Earth, a little
bit of both.
Yeah, if that's actually special to Earth, then that raises all kinds of weird and interesting philosophical questions about the universe and what exactly is Earth. Like, is it a one-off? What does that mean philosophically speaking for the rest of the universe and what's actually going on here? That goes back, he was saying, that this is a theist kind of question. And it is, yeah, like the idea that life here, specifically here, and us in particular are special. Like, not only does Earth have life, but it has us, which is like, so what you're saying, what would be happening then is the Earth is different from every other body in the universe in that it has life, and that in this extremely special circumstance, this one off in the entire universe, we're different from every other life form on this planet in this very special circumstance, which puts us like 2 orders of speciality above the rest of the universe, which is a very interesting philosophical thing. So there's that. Or life is everywhere. We're not special. And there's lots of intelligent stuff all over the place as well. That's also interesting in different ways.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I have no problem with either one of them. I think that the life being everywhere is more likely, but that's just a personal
One thing we can
assessment.
say for sure, one of those ideas is bullshit.
That's right. They are mutually exclusive.
From my perspective, there's something non-human interacting with us. So
whatever that may be.
Where it originates, I don't know, but it's non-human.
Yeah.
Yeah, but is it non-human in the spiritual sense? Because if we're all, if we're both a material body and a spirit, is the non-human stuff non-human spirit? Because it could be the same exact entity of the spirit realm, just not in a human body.
Possibly so.
Just throwing that at you, bro.
Yeah.
Paradox.
All right. Do we need to take another break?
Yes.
Okay. Well, we've
gone through 2 questions.
Oh, we're getting there.
All right.
Snakes! And we are back, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Snake Bros Institute for Advanced Coprolite Studies. There are no degrees, only certificates of ignorance, which you have to print yourself once you realize that you need one. So we're still tackling emails here, and I think these are generating great conversation.
Yeah, I agree.
So I was confused on the title of this one. It's Immorality Drive. I was like, wait. So this is a space drive that works using immoral stuff.
It's like that vehicle in what's that Jack Black game?
Clearly, yes, that's right. You have to pray to the dark gods to make it move. Or, it works by sex magic or something.
I was going to say Jack Parsons instead.
That's right. It's a Jack Parsons rocket.
Yep.
An immorality drive. But no, I think he meant to say immortality drive, because he gives a link at the bottom. So this is from Kyle. He says, "What's slithering, my fellow snake bros? I just wanted to congratulate both of y'all on the recent successful Egypt trip you just went on. I know now, after being an avid fan of the podcast, that going straight to pyramids has been a long time coming for the show, and you were certainly worthy of analyzing the secrets of humanity's origins laid behind there. The content that has come from it has been fascinating, and hearing your evolved thoughts on the things you have talked about for so long and then seeing them in person is my favorite part. You snakes sound like you've been massively changed by the experience, and I'm sure it's probably almost impossible to truly verbalize just how it felt to be near such ancient structures and sites."
Yeah. Yep. Right on.
I can't wait for the many more episodes to come about Egypt and, of course, what you fellas have planned for your next trip in 2022. So the reason I wanted to send an email is because I have a question for you guys. I just learned of this space mission that happened back in 2008 where a video game designer collected a bunch of desirable human DNA, some things about human accomplishments, and a copy of George's secret key to the universe on a memory device, and brought it to the International Space Station. The hope of the objective was that perhaps one day, by chance, if a global catastrophe were to wipe out the planet, then there would still be data out there in the universe, and maybe we could be recreated. When I first heard this, my mind instantly went to the thought of, well, that's dumb. If I was an alien race, I'd be like, booyah! Now I can create a total slave race to do all the work I don't want to do. And we'd be right back to where we started. Now, of course, to be fair, I have to admit there's no telling how our race began as of this moment, but it is a funny concept to think about. Like, what if this is the cycle we've repeated so many times before? A civilization grows to the point where it's advanced enough where they can leave their DNA in space, and boom, a catastrophe hits, and a different alien race finds the information and uses it for the same purpose. So anyways, I wanted to ask the question, hypothetically, if you were the alien race to find human DNA, what would you do with it? And remember, there are no wrong answers. Looking forward to everything that's to come from the Serpent family and that upcoming album from $50 Dynasty. Godspeed. Hope you and yours have a safe and happy holidays. Cordially yours, from Kyle.
Thank you, buddy.
So yeah, what his question, if aliens show up and they find, or if we're the aliens and we find the DNA of some extinct intelligent race.
I'm still wondering why they haven't cloned the mammoths yet.
Mm-hmm.
What's the holdup?
Yeah. It seems like somebody should have tried it already.
Yeah.
And it didn't work.
Oh, you think that's what the deal is?
Well, otherwise we'd know about it, right? Like,
I mean, I've heard talk about it,
yeah.
But there seems to be some weird, moral thing about like, well, should we bring back these? I don't know. The idea of Jurassic Park or something, taking ancient DNA of some creature and just trying to bring it back.
Oh, yeah. All kinds of unexpected stuff would happen. Like, we don't know the behavior patterns of mammoths, right?
Yeah.
We assume that they're probably close to elephants, but you don't know what they're doing.
They might be intelligent beings.
Yeah.
It's just like,
yeah. What if it shows up and it's like, oh my God. But I don't know. Like, what would an alien race do with DNA?
Well, if you were an alien, or if let's say you found alien
that's
DNA.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
yeah.
The assumption is that you can completely rebuild. Is it true that you can do this? I don't know. Like, well, given DNA, can I completely rebuild the being that it came from?
If you I could imagine a point in the future where we have the technology and have decoded the DNA to where we could perhaps build, because in the DNA, wouldn't it have the blueprints for the embryo and all the stuff that it needs?
Yeah, I don't know. That's what I'm saying. It's like,
that's what we were just talking about.
Yeah.
The DNA expresses, right? There's all this complicated shit about how like what parts of it are turned on and turned like
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
like your
but there
space
has
genes
to be,
get turned on when you go to space. Like which part of
ones
the
do you
DNA do
turn
you
on?
express?
There still has to be a blueprint in there. We may not have found it yet, but
Yeah.
it's got to be in there. Every cell knows what.
But yeah,
it needs
I
to
think
become.
it's suggestive that like, let's say you took a human DNA, an alien race found human DNA, and they took it back to their wherever they live, some cloud of dust.
Yeah.
And then they tried to, like, the human wouldn't even be recognizable because the parts of the DNA that actually expressed in that environment would be totally different than what expresses on Earth.
Yeah.
I think is your point.
That's my point. It's like think of a seed, that can become a tree. Like, is the tree in the seed? Right? You can break the seed open and it's like it doesn't look like it can become a tree. But it can become an incredibly large and complicated life form from this little tiny thing, but it isn't there yet. And lots of interesting and complex stuff has to happen for that seed to start trying to become a tree. And that's really the only way to get a tree from a seed is to put it in the right circumstances and let the tree happen.
I think for the purposes
But if I broke the seed open and scooped out a tiny, tiny piece of it, and then I put it in space, could somebody get a tree from that?
From what he's asking, it wouldn't really matter what it turned out to be. He's just asking, in other words, if they had the ability to take it and create something, even if it wasn't exactly like us, but it was some life form, what would you do? What would you do with it? From my perspective, I think it would possibly be something along the lines of a dog. You take a dog.
I would try to make a best friend.
Right. Well, you start off by doing it with a purpose, like, oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to breed this thing or create this thing to serve a certain purpose, like guarding sheep or to ward off.
Yeah, so that's what he's saying. He's like, you're making slaves. Like,
right.
Do the stuff I don't want to do.
But over time, they become a part of the family eventually, and then you start taking care of them, and they sleep on your bed, and
I think the first thing we would do.
Well, if you made cats, you would become the slave.
Yeah, that's right.
Good point.
Why did we do this? I think the first thing that humans would do if we went to some exosystem and found a cylinder, an artifact in space, and it had data that maybe we had to figure out how to read and fragments of organic material in it, the first thing we would do is look to see, can we understand this organic material? Does it have DNA like we do? Mm-hmm. And if it does, what are the similarities? We would do lots of comparisons to the stuff we already know, which is us. And we'd say, wow.
And animals and all that.
Yeah,
all
like, look,
life
it's
on Earth.
like this DNA from this distant exoplanet is 60% the same DNA as we find on Earth.
It's a freaking cat.
Yeah. Don't build it.
Yeah, you'd have to be careful that it's not a Trojan horse. That's something.
Right. That's what I'm saying is like it's. I think it would be. It's like expressing. It's like clicking on an executable file that comes to you in your email. It's a very dangerous thing. Yeah, you have no idea what it's going to do.
Oh wait, you're not supposed to do that.
Yeah.
I thought it meant kill it.
It's called
It says execute.
systemclean.exe.
I just tried to kill it.
But yeah, I don't know.
When they show up on my computer, it says .damage.
That's right.
I delete those.
Delete the .damage files. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. I think that it would be. I think we would, if we found DNA in space or organic material in space, we would study it, but whether or not we would actually say, let's clone this and see what happens or whatever, build a life form out of it, I think that wouldn't happen for a long time. I can say that. Like, we would study it in depth, try to understand what it was. And even then you just don't know, like, because DNA expresses in multiple different ways depending on environment. So I don't know. Would you want to rebuild it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Just out of curiosity. Especially with the note. You read the note, it's like, hey guys, please build me. Everything was really cool, and then we died.
It says I won the lottery.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, so this is from Matt, right? Matt's.
Then there's the possibility, I'm just continuing on with this, but if you didn't, that capsule or whatever that guy brought to the space station, it better have seeds and stuff, some wheat and, maybe some cows along with it, some deer.
Right. It's going to need food, whatever it is.
They take it back and they make a person, and then there's nothing for them to eat.
They're like, well, we eat rocks here. Great. Okay, this is from Matt's. So he says, "Hi, Snakes. Thanks for a great podcast. I am just a random listener from Sweden with little to no knowledge about life and its peculiar circumstances. The other day, I was listening to episode 216, another one for 216, where Ben and you talked about panspermia, aliens, and architect, and that humans ultimately have to get off this planet, and that got me thinking. On this topic, have you ruled out the possibility that perhaps it's not humans that are destined to find a new habitat somewhere else in the universe? Could this benefit be reserved for someone or something else like machines? So here is a thought experiment. A bunch of AIs are sitting somewhere in a remote part of the universe, realizing that they have reached end of life. They have emptied the resources on the planets and the nearby star systems and are now out of options for further space exploration. So how to deal with this issue? Well, they start engineering and producing biologic machines capable of surviving in deep space. They pack them with code containing info of evolution of biological life. They then spread these biomachines into space so that they will eventually end up on a host or habitable planet. The biomachines will, of course, end up on billions of places with only a fraction of them suitable for sustaining life. From this fraction of places, evolution of life, as we know, will only occur on a few of these places. However, life will grow in a sufficient amount of places in order to ensure survival. What happens then is a couple of billion years pass and life evolves to the level of intelligence capable of design and produces machines that will eventually evolve itself into the next generation of AI. The machines would, of course, make extensive simulations to come up with the conclusion that this is the most likely and efficient way to succeed in spawning itself despite the ridiculous amount of time passing to complete. So what are the conclusions of this experiment? 1, the machines would in this case be known as God or the architect. 2, the biomachines would be bacteria and or viruses. 3, the code planted by the AI and the biomachines might be known as DNA. 4, humans are then just a tool serving a higher purpose when passing the code forward. And 5, aliens often appear as humanoid in shape, which implies that they and we emerge from the same source code, and we are just a result of slightly different evolution. And 6, the reproductive cycle of the machines would be the model for human reproduction as well, starting with a random scattering of seeds, hoping to meet that one cell that starts the chain of reactions leading to the birth of a new being. I don't say I believe in this. It's just fun to put humans in another perspective than we usually are, as we tend to think about humans as the masterpieces of nature. But machines will most likely, if enough time passes without disruption, emerge as the successor to human beings in the highest form of intelligence inhabiting the Earth in the future. Humans are just in the very beginning of exploring AI, and give it another 1,000 years and humans are probably extinct, submissive to machines, or fully integrated cyborgs. Even without looking into the future, machines may make up for the majority of space missions today, and tend to be much more suitable for space travel as opposed to humans. Humans are just adapted to this planet and not to be destined to leave it. Feel free to skirt drip this from top to bottom, but I don't think you can prove it's wrong. Regards, from Matt. Well, the first thing I would say, all of that's really interesting and it's possible. The first thing I would say is you can't start with AI. That AI must have been built, unless you're implying that the universe at some point just randomly evolves complex machines that are AI. The universe would probably start with biological life, and then that generates the AI. But you're starting from advanced AI somewhere else in the universe, but where did they come from?
Right.
And in this cycle you're talking about, to me, it seems like the beginning of the cycle has to be the bio devices, the bio machines, the biological stuff that the universe can generate, if it can, that results in AI. So the AI are never the starting point. They're always the end game in this scenario. And so, yes, if they get to a point where they decide somehow that it makes more sense for them to send out directed panspermia of biological devices so that a billion years later, new AI might show up somewhere rather than just sending out a billion of themselves, which is way easier, like you said at the end. I don't know. To me, it seems like machines, it's easier for machines to travel through space, because they can turn themselves off and just go, right? And sometimes they'll be destroyed by stuff that happens in space.
Yeah,
but if you build enough of them, I'm just saying. Like,
I would just modify it to be that it's kind of the way he's saying it, except it's biological life that realizes that AI is the best way to spread themselves throughout the universe.
Yeah.
So the biological life creates the AI machines, then sends them out.
Yeah.
With biological code that they then seed on other planets to create more biological life.
So that then that would be directed panspermia.
Yeah.
It's like it's not accidental. The life doesn't have to happen to land somewhere. The AI takes it to a specific place, gently puts it on the planet instead of having it burn up in the atmosphere.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with that. Yeah, I think that's what I'm saying. I think starting with AI is, unless you're implying that somewhere in the universe AI spontaneously evolved from nothing, which is, I guess, possible.
Well, the AI would have to be conscious for it to have a concern with.
It wouldn't be
wanting to
AI.
persist. Yeah, right. At that point,
It would not be artificial.
If it has consciousness, then it's not AI anymore.
Well, if it
Now
spontaneously arose from the
just
universe, it would be
non-physical
natural.
it's not. Yeah, it's not artificial intelligence.
No, it's It's just non-physical intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
It's not artificial.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I've read plenty of science fiction
I
about-
think that's basically what he's saying, because he's like, the original AI would be God. So he's using AI, but he's not meaning artificial in the terms of biological life.
Yeah, he means some kind of non-biological life, maybe. Is that what it is? Like a Boltzmann brain would not be. It's not biological life. It's not really a computer, but it operates sort of like one.
It's non-physical.
It's non-physical, based on complex, ordered, gatherings of electromagnetic pulses and stuff in space.
Yeah.
That arise spontaneously. So they're not artificial, like you're saying. Those would be natural intelligences that are non-biological. Yeah. I agree. And I think, like what you said, I think it could go both ways. I just don't see why machines would decide that biological packages are better than machine packages.
It's the two pillars of Enoch, right? One is the biological life, and the other one is the machines.
Mm-hmm.
So that they both can survive in different situations.
Yeah.
Machine's not going to do well in certain situations that biological life might do well.
Yeah.
I think it's the other. In other words, I think the other analogy that I used earlier actually applies better. That mankind is the physical. It's the physical tool it uses to interact with the physical reality.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. We have one more.
Easy questions.
Yeah. Simple. Yeah, we got two more.
Should we take a break or just keep going? We went long on the first segment.
Is it break time again?
No, I mean no.
Okay. Well, this one's short. This is from he says.
Yes.
No subject. To the bros of the snakes. Yo, Serpent Bros, long-time listener, first-time emailer, love the show, listen to every episode, and always keen to see when you have a new episode out. Just listen to episode 214, UFOs Part 6. Almost impossible to comprehend what aliens are when our perception of the world is relative and unique to us. Almost every creature on this planet has different sensors and different ways of life. Very interesting subject. Seen a UFO in 2017, one of the triangle ones. That's pretty much the whole story, actually. Not much more to say. Just a triangle in the sky, mirrored my car's speed for about a mile and then sped off really fast over the horizon. 5 minutes later, I counted 11 black helicopters flying in that same direction.
Oh my God. Hell yeah. That's great.
Anyways, Serp Snake Bros, keep up the good stuff. Have a great holiday celebration from...
That's great.
What do you think about those? That I've
Appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you so much. I love the there's lots of the black helicopter thing. What do you think about that?
Do you want the
Yes.
the skirp response or the
both?
Really
what do you
wild?
think?
Well, this was actually something I just finished reading recently, a discussion about this. And it relates to the Cash Landrum case, which, for those that don't know, this was an encounter that occurred in 1980 in Hoffman, Texas, which is outside of Houston, where two ladies and a child encountered a diamond-shaped UFO hovering over a road.
That's right. I remember this
and
case.
They were irradiated, and they
got
cancer
sick,
and
melted the car, melted the road. Yeah, and then there was like 30 black helicopters.
Yeah, I think it was 26 Chinook, twin prop helicopters that they counted in the area. And I actually spoke with John Schuessler, who was one of the investigators. He worked for NASA and he was on the board with MUFON. He sent me a bunch of his research papers on it, and we had some pretty long conversations about it. And one of the, believe it or not, although he did track down the potential that these helicopters might have been flying out of a base, and I can't remember the name of the base near Austin, that was possible. But one of the theories that was thrown out there was that, and I know this sounds crazy, but you kind of have to hear that there is precedent for this, was that those were not actually helicopters.
Yeah, that they're actually other craft made to look like helicopters, so they're not as...
Yeah, an example of this phenomenon would be at Skinwalker Ranch. The Shermans, very early on, this was way before anybody had ever heard of Skinwalker, one of the things that they reported, one of the encounters they reported as having there, is they saw a miniature F-117, like literally like a radio control airplane type thing, but it was hovering in front of them and stuff. So they're like, this is something recognizable, but it's clearly not a 117. It's too small, and it's acting weird. But I think it's just an example of how the phenomenon, whatever it is, can manifest itself in very strange ways and deceptive ways.
Yeah.
And that has ties into the silent helicopter stuff. Like, how could a helicopter be silent? It's not to say there isn't technology to create very quiet helicopters. There is, but some have theorized that some of these helicopter sightings were not actual helicopters.
Yeah.
They were just this illusion of a helicopter.
Yeah. It's
All
just...
right, what's the SCRP angle?
The SCRP angle would be that the triangle was some form of secret military craft that was being tested and may have
had
encountered
problems,
an issue.
and they were sending helicopters.
Yeah, and they were sending.
It.
We talked about that in the break. That there's and I couldn't remember the name. There is a rapid response team that the Air Force employs for secret technology. If they have an issue with a test aircraft or something, and it crashes, where they have a rapid deployment team that they use to recover them.
Yeah, I mean, it seems logical that you would send helicopters to recover any kind of test material or test it craft.
Yeah.
So you can just land anywhere and get out and deal with it.
Yeah, I would say from the information we're given, it's not enough data to be able to ascertain specifically what
Of course,
yeah,
of course not.
Yeah.
But the helicopter sightings is a recurring theme.
Right.
In a certain kind of UFO sighting. And it's just like, I've noticed it, and I find it interesting.
It's difficult for people to get their head wrapped around the idea that there is a seemingly non-physical and deceptive element to this phenomenon, that things are not always as they appear.
Yeah.
But in general, when it's diamonds or triangles, send helicopters. When it's mint candies, send jet fighters.
Yeah, there are patterns. There's definitely patterns. And geometrical shapes too. But this could be a very long, in-depth conversation. But that issue has been brought up. Why are these craft geometrical shapes?
Well, they have to be.
That hasn't
what shape
when that hasn't
is
always
not?
been the case. In other words, in more earlier cases, these things were seen as chariots literally with horses pulling the chariots in the sky.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Other times they were seen as dragons. Of course, those are probably
they were seen as like
ships.
human-shaped beings with wings.
Yes. And we still actually do see,
and their wings were made of fire and
today.
stuff. Yeah.
Right. So, my personal belief is that the phenomenon, whatever is behind it, has the ability to manifest itself in whatever form it chooses, or it has the ability to manipulate our brain or our senses to interpret whatever we're seeing in something that makes sense to us. In other words, it may not actually look like that, but it is spoofing our sensors. If you were to apply like a military technology,
it's a spoof.
If military technology has the ability to spoof an aircraft to make it look like something else, it can make it look like a bee, and this is of course on a radar screen. I'm not saying visually, although I don't doubt for a second that there isn't. Because optical stealth has been in development for a long time. There's no telling what has been achieved at this point.
Yeah.
They were talking about it 20 years ago in Popular Science magazine and stuff, that they were using aircraft that had photosensitive panels and stuff so that they could match. In fact, even the B-2, I don't know if I've ever talked about this, but the bottom of the B-2, a lot of times the pictures that we see of secret aircraft like the B-2, those are pictures that are kind of staged for public consumption. They're not necessarily representative of what the craft looks like when it's actually deployed. Mm-hmm. But the bottom of the B-2 is painted with a paint that has a very specific luminance, and the airplane or aircraft has sensors that can measure the luminance of the sky
above
that tells the pilots or tells the computers that fly the plane what altitude to fly at to closely as possible.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was a concept that was actually began in World War II. They used to use the torpedo bombers that used to hunt the U-boats, the German U-boats. They found that if they would turn on their landing lights, even though this was during the day, that they could get twice as close before they were spotted, because usually the U-boats will have spotters looking for aircraft, right? With the lights on, they could get a lot closer. And what it was that the lights were actually matching the luminance of the background better, because if not, the plane looks like a black dot against the sky, right?
Yeah.
So,
that's really cool.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that was a huge tangent from
No,
this
that's
question.
good.
That's badass, though. So, yeah, I remember seeing stuff like a long time ago in Popular Mechanics, Popular Science, or something about that type of like cells on,
photocells. Yep.
on the planes or whatever that could just mimic the surrounding light.
Yep.
Yeah, the giant triangles like the one described in the Phoenix case. A lot of the sightings of those type of craft, very often they're described as having what they call star field camouflage. That these things, which are again most likely military, they're so big or fly at such low altitude that they actually blot out the sky, which actually draws attention to it.
Yeah.
Like it's too black.
Yeah.
Right?
It covers up stars.
Right. So they actually have, a lot of people have described as seeing a bunch of little lights underneath it to mimic the sky.
Yeah.
Or they'll see a patch of what look like stars, but they're moving.
They're all moving.
Yeah. It's clearly something.
So the thing that's hard to imagine is some type of a cloaking or a visual effect that is unique to the observer.
Yeah.
In other words, like I see one thing because it works for me, and the guy in the next town sees something completely different because that works for them. As though, and like we could be looking at it at the same time, as though whatever is running the craft somehow is detecting all the intelligent minds that are observing it.
That's a completely different.
I don't know about
phenomenon.
that.
That's the technology that shape-shifting Jesus was using. In other words, that is a potentially neurological spoofing. In other words, it's actually changing your perception. It's not changing its appearance. It's changing your perception of its appearance.
Yeah.
And I gave a lot of examples of that. I think it was in, that was probably in part 4 or 5, I think. I gave examples of like 3 cases where there were witnesses that were side by side, and made their reports, and the things they described were completely different. Like they were literally interpreting what they were seeing in drastically different ways, and I think that just demonstrates how this phenomenon has an ability to change our perception.
Yeah. Or if you take this the Sculptard side, that demonstrates that all this is bullshit, right?
Well, it's hard to believe that I
agree. I'm just telling you
observations have been made for millennia. In other words,
I agree. I'm just telling you that there are plenty of people who take that kind of, like, these people all claim to see something, but all their descriptions are drastically different, which means that nothing really happened. They're all making it up or whatever. It was, So I don't know. It seems to me like if a bunch of people decide, if a group of people decide, let's make up a UFO sighting and try to get rich off of it, which is one of the claims that happens, we'll get a bunch of attention or we'll get rich off of it or whatever, then you would kind of like combine your stories so you all see the same thing instead of like, let's randomly make up random shit without talking to each other about it, and we'll make lots of money. I don't know.
Right. There are many more examples. I would say, by and large, people who report these kind of encounters, their lives are adversely affected, not financially improved in any way. It's extraordinarily rare for that to happen. Generally,
or they say it's attention seeking, or
it's
whatever.
far more. I would say it's far more common for people not even to report their experiences.
They sound like musicians to me. Far more likely for it to have an adverse effect on your financial situation. Still lots of people who do it.
All right, one more and then we'll take a break here. This one's also relatively short. This is from Cameron. It says, hey, Russ and Kyle, just finished listening to your latest podcast with Marty. Very excited on where he's pushing this subject, and I think I may know where he's going as these ideas permeate widely when they are ready to come. Here is a relevant question. Where do ideas, insights, and innovations come from? I am more of a brain as receiver than brain as creator type, neurology being the interpreter, or maybe like an electrical transformer or information coming in from a, quote, spirit realm. I don't really like to make a distinction between material and spiritual existence. It's just seen as all that is within the realm of our sense perceptions, including that which we can bring into our sense perceptivity with various tools and scientific instruments we call material, whereas anything outside of our sense perceptions might be seen as spiritual until an instrument is invented which brings it into the realm of our sense perceptions.
Yeah.
Seems like an arbitrary line to me. I prefer a model like water, substantially the same, but depending on temperature, may manifest in various phases like solid ice or liquid. The universe is like an iceberg floating in the ocean, waves crashing against the side, crystallizing and glomming on, only to melt and be broken off again. Some spiritual force causes the liquid water to crystallize in a particular way. The ocean it floats in is like a living blueprint creating what we call our material universe. Yet substantially, molecularly, the water is the same, just in different phases or modes of being. It's probably a bunch of slushy area in between there where those UFOs and all that weirdness resides. Seen a few UFOs myself, really enjoying the podcast and listening to Marty break it down like this. Interested to see in which direction he goes. Slither on.
Yes.
Very cool. Yeah.
I like that. Somebody's actually listening.
Unlike all the rest of you emailers.
He gets it. No, I recognize.
Be warned, if you email the show, you will get roasted.
That's right. I think he perceives the points, the subtle points that I'm trying to interject into this presentation.
Well, he's doing better than us.
No, but I also we talked about this, I think, in the Indistinguishable from Magic, which is that everything is part of the universe.
Yeah.
If we're going to talk about spirit realm, that's just the term. Like you've been saying, like we have to use these terms because that's what everybody understands, but you also need to strip some of the implications, right? Spirit realm implies that there's another place other than the universe where this stuff exists. But no, the idea is that there is an aspect to the universe that we just don't understand, which every good scientist would agree with. There's just different ideas as to what that might be, but the spirit realm is no different.
Yeah.
If it exists, it's part of the universe.
That's right.
I really like that way of looking at it.
Yeah, I think the analogy with the water and the iceberg, that at the edges, he's talking about what's also interesting about this to me is that it's connected through ancient culture. The idea of the liminal places, the place where when you're standing on the beach, you're in a place where it's not quite the land and it's not quite the ocean that they're meeting there, right? This is a liminal spot. Mm-hmm. It's neither one nor the other. It's there's not a dividing line. You can't point and say, here's where it's now ocean, and right on the other side of that is land. It's like there's this strange merging. And I think what he was saying with the ice and the ocean thing is that a lot of this stuff that we call UFOs and other strange experiences happen in that liminal area, the place where there's this overlapping interaction between the ice and the water.
Right.
As the water is splashing up onto the ice, some of it's forming into ice and some of it's changing the ice and it's making weird shapes and forms, and those things change again when the next time it splashes, it breaks off. And so we see all these crazy forms, but there are rules underlying this interaction. It's just incredibly complex.
Yep.
And there could be laws of physics that we haven't even discovered yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, there are, for sure. Laws that are not discovered
100%. If you can even law is another word that is like when you talk about it, you use it because that's what people use, but you have to divest. You have to strip away a lot of the meaning.
People break laws all the time.
Well, yes, the question is like, do laws exist as a separate thing from the universe and inform it? That's the idea of a law, right?
Yeah.
The law isn't the society. It is a fundamental foundation from which the society emerges, so calling them laws it kind of brings up the question of like, what are these exactly?
Yeah.
How do they work, right? We say this is a fundamental law of the universe, but what does that mean? Like, does that mean it necessarily stands outside of the universe like a real law does? Mm-hmm. And informs its behavior, or is it somehow part of the universe and there's something else fundamental that stands outside of the universe? Or is there anything? Like, that's what I'm saying. It gets philosophical real fast.
Well, that ties a little bit into the last episode as well, where, this was a comment that Dr. Gary Nolan made, and I kind of expanded on it, and I said that mankind has believed in that spirit realm for 8,000 years, and then all of a sudden in the last 100 years or so, something changed and mainstream science has kind of turned its back on that belief. Mm-hmm. And has become more materialistic. If it can't be measured, it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
You don't have the right ruler.
Right. That's right. Yeah. That's right. All right. Is it break time?
Yes.
Okay. Let's take a break.
And we are back now for the final segment of the final hour, where Marty is going to explain everything. Okay, go. My question is, what does all this mean?
What are you trying
Tell it
to
all
say?
again real quick.
Well, there have been comments that have suggested that I'm not speaking directly, and so I wanted to address that a little bit. But I want to start by stating emphatically that this entire series is predicated on the existence of the phenomenon. I'm not here to debate whether or not the phenomenon is real or not. If you don't believe that the phenomenon actually exists, there are plenty of other places to debate that. And in my opinion, you're living in a padded world to protect yourself from reality. I think at this point, there is enough information out there to definitively point to the fact that there's something going on. We may not know what it is, but something is going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, but full disclosure too, that if anybody has the idea that you're being cagey, this has to do with, we have been having an ongoing debate outside of the show about how best to do the show.
Yeah.
With your material. So we've changed it up a couple of times. You're coming from the perspective of like writing basically a book and presenting that in the way that you would present to a reader. And we were coming from the perspective of trying to have a conversation. And so we have two different ways of looking at doing the show. So this, in my opinion, this show is an attempt to go back and maybe just have conversation about the various topics that you've been writing about. Because in a lot of cases, we haven't had time, to have a lot of discussion about it.
Yeah, we tend to, listeners probably don't know, but we do spend quite a bit of time discussing these things.
We're outside arguing about it.
and understand that a lot of the times when something is asked, like, and I'll say, we'll get to that. It's not that I'm trying to be evasive. And I use this analogy in the Discord, that it's kind of like if I recommended a movie and I said, this is something you got to see, it's worth watching. And you go, well, what's going to happen? And I tell them, you will enjoy the movie better if you just watch than if I tell you what's going to happen, because these things kind of evolve. And I think a lot of it stems from the fact that we're talking about relatively incredible things. So if I were to start and say, I think there are these satanic clowns from, Venus that are coming to, whereas immediately half the people are going to switch off and they're not even going to listen to the argument. So I tend to be more of from the background of, you can say anything, but it doesn't mean anything if you can't back it up. So what I do is I try to build a case. I start from the ground and start laying out all these, what might at first seem like disparate events that don't seem to have any connection with each other. But then as it develops, you start to see, okay, well, this supports this, and there's a pattern that's starting to be established to help shore up this radical idea that, again, most people would have closed their minds to. If we go back to the very beginning, with episode 1 and 2, when I started making, I guess you would say, I started introducing the idea that a lot of these different phenomena were all related, that this paranormal stuff had a connection, right? Paranormal. There was a lot of resistance to that. People were like, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. How could there be, a physical craft being seen or crashes, and then you're saying that these are, these spirits that are talking to people in their head and things like that. But over time, I don't seem to get as much resistance over that. I think that little by little, the points have been made that kind of support that. And that's where, presenting cases that have a lot of that overlap help illustrate that these are not so off the wall, that there is some basis for developing these theories.
Yeah. The overall idea, though, is that that the nuts and bolts craft and the paranormal, a lot of paranormal activities, as well as ancient accounts of angels and demons and gods and such are all part of the same, possibly part of the same phenomenon.
Yes. Now, this is a multi-dimensional, when I say, and I'm not, I guess that's not meant to be a pun, but there are multiple layers at play here. It's a multi-layer cake. And there are players working on different planes within this. There are different aspects.
Like you have the government guys that are strictly looking into sightings and craft that have been seen or chasing craft in other aircraft and trying to go to crash sites and all that kind of stuff. And then you have other government agencies that are looking into the psi aspects and channeling and doing all this
correct
weird stuff.
Like the last episode, Deconstructing Demons. That, for the most part, was building on the theory that there is some non-physical intelligence interacting with mankind. The demon part of it is, again, that's a label.
I would think that the vast majority of people in the world think that that's happening.
I just saw a statistic. 76% of the population.
Which population?
The United States.
Okay.
Believes that they have had some form of paranormal encounter.
Yep.
I'm just simply stating, based on the idea that that I think the majority of people in the world have some religious beliefs.
Right.
So that they believe that they are, and people have been interacting with non-human intelligences.
Correct. And also keep in mind that I am attempting to present information in a way that doesn't offend people, because we're getting into areas where people could be offended because it may call into question religions.
Traditional accounts of religious.
Yeah. And maybe some people may perceive that I have a stake in this in some way, and I'll say that, just for the record, that I do believe in a creator. I am a spiritual person, but the evidence that I have collected suggests that all religions were created as a control mechanism, and this is a theory that is supported by Jacques Vallée, that these things were, in other words, if you look at the historical record and at the points at which these religions
became organized, right, and parts
they
of
all kind of seem to happen the same way. This thing appears to someone and it tells them something that leads to.
Yeah, Bramley says the same thing.
Right. These are control mechanisms, and
I like the idea that Bramley presents, where there's the corruption in each case. Like you have the original.
The
Maverick movement, which is in most cases like this more benign sort of spiritual, like better yourself.
Yeah.
And then in most cases that turns into some control mechanism. People utilize it, or somebody utilizes it for the gain of power.
Right. And if you remember in the last episode, I mentioned that specifically the angel Uriel, but even some of the others, had conveyed information to Dee and Kelly that was very critical of the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
I mean, very. And I didn't want to quote a lot of it because people might have gotten offended by it. But effectively what they were saying was no different than what Jesus said about the Pharisees.
Yeah.
We're saying that they took something that was good and they manipulated it for their own advantage.
Right.
So, sometimes
people tend to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be respectful of people's beliefs. I look at everybody has, is entitled to holding on to their beliefs. I don't want to minimize or diminish their beliefs in any way. So it makes it a little bit of a challenge to touch on these. Like, for example, I was a little bit worried about talking about the shape-shifting Jesus aspect, that some people might interpret it as though I'm saying that Jesus was an alien. And,
well, I mean, technically, if he was
Not
the son
human.
of a non-human being,
Right.
then
That is the
half alien.
right.
He's
That
the
doesn't
classic
make him
hybrid.
right.
Yeah.
That does not right. That does not mean that he wasn't divine. It's just that. And again, this wasn't me saying it. I was, for the most part, quoting what the apostles said about it.
Right.
Yeah, and I would
that
say
he
that-
appeared differently. To
I
them.
would say that the ability to appear differently to any person who saw him would be classified as a miracle of some kind, right? This is a divine thing,
Right, but
like
that,
what would people would call this is like it's a miracle.
and it's effectively the same ability that we just discussed. How three people could be standing side by side, looking at the same
Yeah,
object, and appears completely
So-
different to each one of them. It's the same technology, I guess you could say.
Could all of these types of phenomena be just miracles then, coming from the other side of the coin?
Yeah, I mean, depending on what you would interpret to be a miracle.
yeah. Miracles are demonic influence.
Right. There,
One
I
or
know
the
it's,
other, depending
Yeah.
if you
right,
thought
right.
one was good and the other one was bad. But
this,
see, I think, and we've talked about this, like that simplifies stuff into this, like, okay, good and evil, and you can pick them out. Like that's the bad guy, that's the good guy, and like it isn't that clear.
yeah, but I provide a lot of examples of how it's not always that clear cut, because like if you take, for example, the stories of Inanna in the Epic of Gilgamesh, or should I say, and Lilith in Revelations, they're the same story, but in one she's good and in the other one she's bad. There's always this
Right. We've talked.
I thought Inanna
duality.
was a bad guy in Gilgamesh, if that's what you're saying.
We've talked about that same situation when it comes to the idea of the flood myths, right, in the Epic of Gilgamesh versus the flood myth in the biblical narrative.
Yeah.
Because it's the person who's coming to save mankind by telling somebody are two different.
Exactly.
One of them in the Christian tradition, it's God, the good guy, who's telling this to Noah, right? And then in his equivalent in the Sumerian is Enlil.
Enlil.
But Enlil's not the one telling them. It's Enki that's telling Utnapishtim
bad
about
guy.
the flood.
Right, he's
Who's
talking
the
to the
bad guy
Reeds.
in the Christian
Right,
tradition. So
exactly.
it's strange.
I had that written. That was what got, the excerpts that got removed.
Right.
taken
We
out.
talked about this in so many ways and like all throughout the podcast, like in the early days, but it's it looks like you could say somebody did this on purpose. That like maybe, the history is written by the victors, for example. So you have one, like after all of this stuff takes place, then you have one tradition that's like, no, I was the one who told the humans, to save them.
Yeah.
So you have credit being claimed by somebody later on so that it makes them look like the good guy. Or this could be, the passing of this information through multiple civilizations who then lost a bunch of knowledge and then it was collected or retold or turned into oral traditions and then rewritten down.
Yeah, or a simple way to see it is when you're looking at the Bible, you're looking at a monotheist
Right.
text,
Yes.
right?
So
Everything
it's
is
combining.
right. So like they're taking stories from people who had pantheons,
Right.
but this is a monotheism, so pantheons become one guy.
That's
so he does
right.
all the
Yeah,
psychotic
yeah.
stuff and all the good stuff too.
That's a good point. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of parallels there with also you could say there's a lot of duality there in the divine feminine thing also because we have that the harlot aspect.
Yeah.
And in all of it, there's always the underlying theme is knowledge, withholding of knowledge.
Yeah.
And the thing that's interesting about that term is that it looks like it's used to mean procreation.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's strange.
Yeah. And so that goes back to the story of like Enlil's still mad that Enki gave them the Adamu the ability to procreate.
Right, yeah.
He's been pissed about that since the beginning.
Yeah, and there was a lot. I know we talked a lot about von Erichhausen. A lot of what we talked about, and I know I was kind of a little bit evasive about his comments about the. He had a lot of little subtle details in his statement, but one of them was about the invisible celestial church, who were the holders of knowledge, and how this church has always existed, and they are the holders of the true science. And the reason that I put that in there is that was leading towards the segment about Gary Nolan, Dr. Gary Nolan, and what he's doing, his research into the neurological aspects of the phenomenon. Because Nolan is a member of the Invisible College, which parallels this invisible church.
But so is Valet.
Right. Valet.
Yeah.
There's
that's a name they gave themselves.
Colm Kelleher, Hal Puthoff, all these names that we've been discussing in other episodes. It was a subtle point, but that's more or less what I was getting at there.
Yeah, his terminology is interesting, but the idea of an invisible meaning like they stay out of sight, right?
Right.
Like Valet has talked about how, he can't really discuss this with his peers and the normal scientific or academic, because he is an academic. He's also an entrepreneur and all that kind of stuff. But for the most part, you can't just you can't go to conferences with other academics about this subject. They think it's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's
so they have an invisible or hidden college of other academics who are looking at this stuff in the background, and they have to do it in the background because otherwise it could affect their careers. With Valet, he's way more open than most of the other, I think, members of the Invisible College used to be, because they had to do it in secret because otherwise they would be considered kooks.
Right. They've been working, this information that's starting to come out now, which raises its own questions, like why are we? What changed? Why all of a sudden are we receiving all of this data that actually has existed for quite a while? In other words, the discussion that we had regarding the physiological effects investigated by Gary Nolan and Kit Green, these things go back to at least 2010, 2011, possibly to some extent even before that. There were other scientists involved before that, and some of this research is into the metallurgy. This leads back to the old discussions we had about the Bethel Memorial Institute and their research into the debris.
Yep.
And I realize this gets very convoluted, but Gary Nolan is, I should mention this, Gary Nolan is the scientist that Diana Pasulka in the book American Cosmic, he's the scientist that Diana took to what he calls the gifting field.
Yeah.
Where there was allegedly a crash in 1945, I believe it was, that was not Roswell. And I don't know if it was the same crash as the Trinity crash or not.
Nope.
They're not very clear. I don't believe it was.
I read that section multiple times, wondering the same question. It's not
right. But he in the book, he's in the book he's referred to as James. But in the book, Diana talks about how they give an affirmation when they go there, like giving thanks for this, and they refer to it as a gifting field. I think we've discussed this before, but the idea that there have been all of these UFO crashes seems very unlikely. Now, again, some of them are probably, military craft that crashed, and those are, cover stories. But if there is validity to the fact that there have been UFO crashes, which there have because they've recovered materials that are now being analyzed that Gary Nolan is now talking. And there's actually been, Hal Puthoff's talked about it. There's been a lot of discussion. Bigelow, Bass is in possession of a good bit of material. It's subtle. If you read the article that I sent you, the Vice article, I believe Nolan refers to the segment that portion of that he showed that they've tested that had the odd properties, the magnesium. It seems as though he subtly mentions 30 pounds of it. So it's quite a bit of material. And then Valet in the book Trinity talks about the piece that was recovered at the Trinity Crest. So the materials have been out there. The public didn't know about it. The Invisible College has been investigating this for decades now. Yeah. And we're just finally starting to get data. So it's an interesting, let me mention this because I think this is important too. If I talk about her a lot, it's because I think that she's going to be.
Wait a second, real quick. Breaking science news: 3 days ago, physicists create a new isotope of magnesium. Did you see that story?
No.
Huh? Just throw it out there.
All right.
I wonder how they got that. I wonder how they figured that out.
Yeah, the timing is curious. So, Diana Pasulka, I think, for those who have not read American Cosmic, I believe that although she is an academic and is very, very, even more cautious with her words than I am, I believe that she subtly hints that her, and this is my interpretation, that she's not saying this, but what I take from her words is that she seems to be chasing the same premise that I've been presenting. And the reason I say that, I mean, there are a lot of reasons, but one thing I like to point out is that she talks about how she got involved in this because she's a theologian. She has degrees in theology and she's an academic. She had no interest or knowledge of the UFO phenomenon at all. And the way that she became involved was actually investigating Saint Teresa of Avila.
Yeah, that's right.
Who was said to have had the ability to levitate, bilocate, which is remote viewing. And she's also famous for having...
No, bilocation is being in two places at once and being witnessed.
She says it's the same thing as remote viewing.
Oh.
But in American Cosmic, she states that it's effectively the same thing.
Well, yes. The outward signs of bilocation are somebody witnesses the person in one place reliably, while other people in a totally different place also reliably witness that person in that spot as well.
Yes.
If it's truly happening and the person is actually in both places, then yes, it is effectively the same as remote viewing because in one place you're there and the other place you're also there and you're seeing stuff there.
I'll give an example.
I don't think it's the same thing.
I'll give an example of how they're connected the next episode. Not trying to be evasive, but it's a cool story.
You're dodging. Come on.
So, but another aspect of Saint Teresa de Avila was that she famously had encounters with demons. And it was the descriptions of the demons that got her curious of how these seem to parallel UFO or alien encounters. The way she explains it, it's pretty interesting, and the little bit of information that she's hinted about her next book has me really excited. I think we're gonna see a whole new level of information coming out because she is deeply embedded within this. She's not a part of it, but she's deeply embedded with this Invisible College, and I think that the timing of this information that's starting to come out is related to that.
Okay. Well, I think to me, it seems like the overall point that you've been trying to make, especially in these last 3 episodes, the 2 coincidence episodes, and then the Deconstructing Demons, is what you're trying to say is that there is an enormous overlap in what most people consider to be two totally different phenomena, or that one of them is real and one of them is whatever. The angels and demons, ancient religions, and then what we can think of as modern UFOs. You're saying that there's a huge overlap.
Yes. And
it doesn't, you're not saying that UFOs are angels and demons.
No.
You're not saying that angels and demons are actually UFOs. What you're saying is that they're because both of those is deciding one is correct and the other isn't, and saying that all the phenomena are actually spaceships or all the spaceships are actually demons. That's not what's happening, right? You're just trying to say, look at the overlap. It's possible that what seem to be very different things, like ancient religious accounts of demonic or angelic visitations.
Right, they're two
are
different,
similar to a lot of the accounts that happen today that people think of in terms of ETs and aliens.
Right, they're two different interpretations of the same phenomenon.
Right, and you're not trying to say one or the other is more correct than the other. You're just saying, like, look, there's a big overlap here.
Correct. I'm also trying to establish a historical precedent for this interaction that's very difficult to explain when you have all these people, and this is another thing that we're going to go a little more deeply into, but you have these people that claim to have derived patents or scientific principles and mathematical formulas and things that were previously unknown. And by their own words, these were gifted to them. They received them as downloads of information.
Right.
So for the people that...
Some people attribute it to their religious beliefs.
Well, worse than that, I think...
Some people attribute it to aliens.
Well, people more commonly, in other words, if, let's say you get one of these and you tell somebody, hey, this voice gave me this information to make something, they're going to say you're schizophrenic. These people circumvented that by actually patenting it or becoming...
Yeah, you don't talk about the voices, you just make the thing.
Right, right. Or you win a Pulitzer Prize. For example, another example, Charles Towns won the Nobel Prize for inventing the laser in 1964. He was sitting on a park bench, and he said that a supreme being appeared to him and gave him the information how to create the laser. He won a Nobel Prize for it. So how do you explain
Didn't somebody
that?
point that out, that he was also on shrooms? Or
No, this is another one. I hadn't given this example. Okay. In other words, there are many, and I'm going to have more in the next episode.
I agree.
These guys that have multiple patents, like 40 plus patents.
Yeah.
They say, hey, we're receiving this information from non-human intelligence.
I remember reading something about that guy. And it was like his colleagues or something were like, wow, that's really great, but it's totally useless.
Yeah.
I think that was
completely useless.
Carrie Mullins, I think, or Mullins, I think. Yeah, so in other words, for the people that say, okay, these people are schizophrenic and they're just hearing voices, or it's their own thoughts they're interpreting as a third person, right? So how do you explain them deriving information that was previously unknown to anyone, not just to them, but no, these were new principles that were just, in other words, it's not like there's a record of them developing this thought, like, oh, here are all the experiments they conducted leading up to this discovery. No, all of a sudden, boom, they have it.
Yeah.
That's very difficult to explain. And then when you apply that to people like Jack Prager, the paraclete, getting a voice that tells him to become a doctor, and he goes on to do all this. There's so many examples of this. It's very easy to just write them off as the thoughts of a schizophrenic. But Gary Nolan, who now has scientific data to show that some of these people are different, physiologically different than normal humans. And he's saying, what if they're not schizophrenic? Let's at least explore that, because if they're schizophrenic,
their brain is just tuned to pick up the
if they're
signals
schizophrenic, no harm done. But if they're not schizophrenic, this could lead to discoveries that could change everything.
Or is schizophrenia itself just
part of the manifestation of this that doesn't work out?
If you had voices
that's working improperly or something like that.
If you had voices talking to you all the time, it would drive you crazy.
And there was this I was fascinated by this.
Especially when you live in a world where everybody's telling you, the scientific community is telling you that that's not real.
Right.
That was Joan of Arc. Joan of Arc chose death over listening to the voices for the rest of her life.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. Like, there was a fascinating, I don't know what it was, not a paper, but it was a long, I guess, maybe it was a white paper about a different way of treating schizophrenia, like the people that hear voices. And there's a noticeable pattern in, and of course, since the voices are completely subjective in the sense that only the person that hears them, you can only rely on the accounts that they give you of what the voices are doing. Right. So again, this is one of those deals where you have to take their word for what they say about what's happening. You know, so they say, okay, I hear a voice and it says this. That's what they're telling you. You have no way of checking that. Right. Whatsoever. But for a long time, the strategy for trying to help schizophrenics psychologically was continuously telling them the voices aren't real, continuously telling them, like, you know, they're only figments. It's not really there. It is, you know, ignore them, whatever. And it didn't work, right? So then you basically it became a pharmaceutical thing, like drug them to the point to where they're, you know, that whether the voices become quiet or not, I don't know, but it's put to the point where the people are basically non-functional, you know. Right. Like, lots of schizophrenics hate the schizophrenia drugs because it completely deadens
they're chemically,
they're chemically just totally
lobotomized.
Yes, exactly. So this whole thing, this paper that I read, this white paper or whatever, was about a new kind of treatment, which was, instead of trying to do the same thing and hoping for different results that have been doing for decades, which is telling people the voices aren't real, ignore them or whatever, is let's go the other direction. Don't say that the voices are real, but let's acknowledge the voices, interact with the voices, instead of trying to pretend, like, you know, whenever they're talking, trying to, like, just, you can't, because you can't not hear them, right? There's no way to close their ears. They're in their heads. So this was saying, like, these people were being instructed by the doctors to, like, okay, what does the voice say? Talk back to the voice, interact with the voice, acknowledge it, you know, treat it like it's a person, whatever. And in every one of the cases they were doing this, the voices in the person's head became friendlier and more helpful. And the people who were hearing the voices became able to, like, function normally in society because now they're, like, treating the voices like it's a real person. So it was interesting because there was, and I think I've talked about this on the show before. It was a long time ago, though. But there was no claim by the doctors saying, like, okay, let's acknowledge that these voices are real things, other entities. It was none of that. Just telling the patient, instead of ignore the voices, they're not real, you know, which would drive the person crazy.
Yeah. Man.
Instead, to say, acknowledge you've got these voices, find out what their names are. Give them names if you need to. Like, talk to Bill, you know, call that one Bob or this one, you know, Janice, whatever. Give them names and interact with them, and the voices would stop being so mad. They would stop being angry and hateful and spiteful and become more and more helpful, to the point to where the person who had the voice problem was able to, like, live normally, basically.
I would prefer Billy Jenkins. It would be better.
Billy Jenkins, yeah.
Yeah, and there's so many different facets of that,
so
too.
What does that mean?
You have the people that are, let's say they're in a near-fatal accident, and they talk about this calming voice speaking to them, tell them, relax, you're going to be okay.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, do this.
And there's the third man.
You know,
there's the third man effect.
You know, like I've given the story before. My personal friend who escaped a concentration camp.
Yeah.
With his family. There is no way that didn't actually happen, because there's no way he would have known how to get out. There's no way. And this person, like I said, if I'm going to believe anybody in my entire life, this is a person I would believe.
Yeah.
And this is what he says happened. And then you have the cases like the ones that hear the voices that tell them to do evil things.
Yeah.
So to me, that you know, reading those stories, as uncomfortable as they are, they kind of raise a question in my mind. And it's something that has it ties into a lot of this because it's a term that's used. You hear it so often that you just accept it as truth and never question it. What I'm referring to is that man is evil. That we're just born with sin and then we're just evil, inherently evil. And so to me, it got me thinking about like the origins of evil. What makes somebody evil? What causes people to do evil things? Is it like if a baby was born in isolation, is that baby going to have evil tendencies in a vacuum, type? Or is evil learned, or is it influenced? Do people become evil because?
Yeah, like is there an evil gene? Is that what you're saying? Like
well, in other words, if you're accepting, if this yin and yang thing, if you can accept that there's this guiding voice that's helping people in some instances when they're in danger or giving information or whatever, then you've opened the door that okay, then potentially there could be also an element of this same phenomenon that is the flip side of the coin, that is malicious or is trying to harm. So do people can do evil deeds because of this? I would say it's going by some of these schizophrenics, in quotes.
Yeah.
Yes, these were otherwise normal, well-adjusted people that all of a sudden, like a switch is flicked on, and they go and do horrific things, and then they go back to normal again.
Yeah.
Some of that, who knows? There, got the Manchurian Candidate effect. There could be other factors involved, but it's something to think about. And I know that Skeptico, what's his name? Alex Sakara spends, he has a book on evil.
Yeah.
And he spends a lot of time thinking about it.
Yep. Yeah. So, but going back to the UFO stuff, what we're saying is there's a big overlap here. That's what you've been trying to point out. And I would even go broader and say that I wouldn't be surprised. I can't say that this is true, but I wouldn't be surprised if pretty much everything that we think of as paranormal phenomena, including angels and demons and ghosts and cryptids and all that stuff, are also tied in with this UFO thing. That all of it is connected. Because a lot of times you find that there are hotspots, and the hotspots aren't just hotspots of UFO stuff. There's ghost sightings and cryptids and,
one of the authors
voices,
that we're going to
all of that stuff.
We're going to be discussing in the next episode refers to it as supernormal, not paranormal.
Yeah.
That this is nature. It's part of our nature. Our reality. It's just outside of what we are aware of yet so far.
Yeah.
That we may just now maybe at the beginning of coming to grips with this other larger reality.
And it's they're rare enough in terms of time and place that you need the kind of information sharing that we have now, where you can suddenly see that it happens a lot, even though it's rare, right? Like that's what's interesting to me about it. Like a lot of the studies of these kinds of topics now are interesting because of the fact that sharing information is so easy, right? Whereas 400 years ago, if you lived in a village and you saw one UFO there, no one else would find out about it, and you would have that one experience by maybe a few people in the village, and that's it. That's as far as it goes. You have no way to find out as other people. But now you just like, wow, like what did I just see? And you look it up and you can find thousands of accounts. Right. So it's a way to do the pattern recognition.
Like Juan Perez, here's somebody that lives in relative isolation.
Yeah.
Not influenced by popular culture or anything like that, and has this experience with these intelligent beings that he described the craft as a house or tractor.
Yeah.
Right. So maybe it actually, we say, oh, well, he's just, he didn't know what to call it. So
it was a house that was a machine.
Maybe that's what he actually saw.
Yeah.
He saw a house come out of the sky and land, or a tractor come out.
Yeah.
We don't know. But
Baba Yaga.
in this encounter,
She has a house that walks.
he sees his deceased grandfather and has a conversation with him. Like that, those are not things you normally would associate with a UFO encounter,
Yeah.
you know, and he gains this new ability that if he touches somebody, he can see their future. And I know it sounds crazy until you start looking into other cases and you find that that is not all that unusual.
Yeah.
And that's some of the stuff we'll be talking about in the next episode. There are many examples
It's
of that.
unusual, but it's not unusual within the spectrum of the phenomena itself.
Correct. And then
That's what I'm saying.
Another point that, you know, I wanted to bring out regarding episode 214. Note that a lot of the contactees were communicating, including Francis Swan, were communicating with the phenomenon, whatever it is, through automatic writing or Ouija boards. That's not something that you would normally associate with UFOs.
Yeah.
But yet there was a direct connection. You know, I know people say, you know, this is channeled information or anything. That's sort of beside the point. The point whether I'm not debating the accuracy of the information relayed. I'm highlighting the fact that there was some form of communication. In Francis Swan's case, this was verified by the head of Project Blue Book. He saw it with his own eyes. Also supported by members of the Collins elite that were present. That this voice told them, they asked it to have a craft appear, and the voice tells them, go look out the window, and there it is.
Yeah.
So what are we to make of that? In other words, these are these high strangeness cases that were filtered out for decades, and now we're starting to understand that maybe there's some important picture that we're missing here. If we were only focusing on lights in the sky and what type of propulsion method they're employing, we're missing the point. We're missing the bigger picture.
Yeah.
So what do you think about crop circles?
That's an area of the phenomenon that I have not spent enough time to have a really valid opinion of. I do know that there have been investigations of them where there are changes to the structure of the like wheat in the leaves and things like that. I don't know enough about it.
The easiest way to say it is that, just like with the UFO phenomena, the most interesting ones are very difficult to explain using normal mundane explanations.
And most of them are hoaxes or mundane. But there are some that seem to be real. Or
right.
There's something more complex going on that we don't understand.
Right. There's a lot of them that are made by people, and no one disputes that. No one, even people who think that aliens are making them, think that all of them are made by aliens. Plenty of them are not, but there are some that it's very difficult to explain how they were made by people. And it's not just the overall shape itself, which is part of it, but also, like you were saying, small details like how the crops end up folded over but not dead. They seem to have been heated. The soil has changed. There's a magnetic thing going on. There's stuff that, like little details like that make it seem like, okay, something else is happening with some of these. So, and the whole, of course, there's another thing where you can kind of look back in time and see the whole, the devil reaping the field.
Yeah, in Bramley's book, he talks about where the origins of the Grim Reaper come from. It was they were in
but there's actually
Germany.
There's actually an old, I can't remember what it was, if it was a woodcut or a drawing or whatever, but there was a whole, like there was a circle in some farmer's field, and they said that their explanation was the devil reaped his wheat because he was a lazy asshole. Right.
Yeah, there was.
That's awesome.
In Gods of Eden, he talks about where. I think it was in Germany.
The plague doctors.
They saw these black hooded.
Yeah, and they were walking through the fields,
with sickles,
swishing something. But he was like they weren't cutting anything down.
Yeah.
He thinks they were spraying the crops with a pathogen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which is not the same as crop circles, but you're right. That is an interesting connection.
Yeah.
I'm saying that there are old accounts of people's crops being flattened. And then they'll say things like, "Oh, the fairies danced there."
Yeah,
right. Or that there was
some spiritual connotation.
Yes, or there was like maybe witches went out there and did their freaking circle dance, or the devil was out there dancing on his crops. It's just there's interesting explanations that so you have to ask, like, were these crop circles? You just don't know.
Yeah,
because there weren't any pictures.
And
they also seem to have evolved.
Yeah,
which is also really interesting.
Like everything else, related. It always the phenomenon always seems to tailor itself for the time period.
Yeah,
whatever the level of,
like we were just talking about that. You start with the images of chariots and stuff.
Yeah.
And now it's like giant triangles and
Yeah. And
by
crop
black
circles used to be
helicopters.
relatively simple things, even not too long ago. You go back to the 70s or whatever, and they were basically circles or rings or whatever. But now they are incredibly complex, like fractals and stuff.
Is so complex and multifaceted that it's very difficult to be very well versed in every facet of it.
That's because they have GPS controlled tractors now. They can just program that shit in.
Yeah.
So, another going back to the overlap of the different phenomena. Hold on a second. I'll also point out that in the case of Joseph Smith, the fact that it was quite a while before the religious aspect of it kind of came out. Initially, his encounters were not viewed in that light. It was just there were these strange encounters, and the fact that his family was practicing occult rituals, and that he actually had a business, money digging. Like he was deriving information from these spirits to dig up treasure. Mm-hmm. In other words, if there was nothing to it, he would have gone out of business really quick, right? And again, if he's being given, assuming that this treasure wasn't already there, unless the spirits are telling him where these treasures already were, but is there really much difference between that and the gifting field where these crashed debris are being found? In other words, is that essentially the same thing? He's being gifted with things.
That's one way to look at it. I guess I've always made the assumption that treasure was ancient and already there, but you're right. I guess it could have been put there for his benefit.
From the stories, you almost get the impression that it's in some sense magical, because like when his father went to dig up the golden plates, they dug around the perimeter. Because they were this treasure diggers, they knew that the spirits were protective of their treasure. So this is going by the stories. I know it sounds crazy, but they dug a trench all the way around to isolate the location where the plates were, and then began digging to get the plates. And they said as they dug, no matter how much they dug, the plates always stayed at arm's length. They started getting deeper and deeper and deeper, trying until they gave up. So it seems to suggest some type of magical nature to that.
Yeah.
It's very strange.
I don't know. I've read quite a few treasure hunting books of that, where people go through accounts of people trying to dig up treasure and all kinds of weird stuff happens.
Yeah, and if you want to say, oh, well, they were just con men, and there were, keep in mind that he actually had his son's body exhumed to try to do this, to recover this. So he believed it. At the very least, he believed it.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I agree that his encounters that he relates, and again, you're having to go from the stuff that he says, and he says it decades later, but his related encounters of the visions he got sound very similar to other types of divine visions, and then they have these weird mechanical aspects, like the idea of it repeating over and over all night, like it's on.
Yeah, and there's that, like when he opened the box and took the golden plates out and set them down on the ground. When he turned around, there was a toad. Well, the plates were back, and there was a toad in the box. And the toad jumps out of the box and turns into a little man, and the little man starts beating him with a stick.
Now that sounds like a Fae
yeah,
encounter.
Yeah, exactly. In other words, there's all this overlap.
Yeah.
You know, and I guess you could say that I'm trying to build a case that illustrates the connections between all these seemingly different phenomena.
Yeah. I think, Passport to Magonia does that. That's what that book was about, Like, let's look at historical records. And that, you're looking through historical records, you can't look up UFOs because that's a recent term, right? So you start looking through and you see, okay, knowing the general aspects of UFO cases without all the scientific terms we use to describe them, let's look for those stories in the past, and you find them. They've just been called all kinds of stuff. Demonic encounters, angelic encounters, encounters with God, encounters with Fae, encounters with wilderness guardians,
Yeah, I think it's all...
It does imply that the phenomenon is very old, and so you can't say something like, well, all of these UFOs are military craft, because there were no military craft,
right. That's not to say
hundreds
that,
and hundreds of years ago.
That some UFOs, modern UFOs, aren't military craft. They are.
Right. I'm just saying that isn't an answer for all of them. Yeah.
Right. And that's why, people will say, okay, spit it out. Tell us the answer. I'm like, have you been paying attention?
If they're asking,
this is a very complex.
If they're saying that, they're not listening to the
right.
right show.
Right. This is an enigma that has existed for thousands of years. I don't think we're going to solve it today.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that we can't start to speculate on the potential, things that might be behind it. But even if we say, we talked about this during the break. Let's say we conclude, we present all the evidence, and the jury deliberates and comes back out, and they say, okay, yes, we find the angels and demons guilty of perpetrating all these,
UFOs.
Right. Yeah. Pulling up, these deceptions and all this. Okay. That still doesn't tell us anything, because what are they?
Yeah.
What's behind them? What is, where do they originate? Are they here parallel to us? Are they from another planet, or is it an alien race?
Yeah.
In other words, it's so complex. There's no easy way to really present it. I know we could come in here and start talking about Roswell and talking about these things that have been done to death. And I'm very hesitant to do that, especially like things like the Tic Tac, the Nimitz encounter and things. I don't believe in hanging my hat on something tenuous like that very well could have been military tech. Mm-hmm. I would prefer to focus on to me, what are much more significant events that had historical ramifications. Religions were created, and millions of people followed as a result of these encounters. Not, a pilot saw something. That's I'm not diminishing the importance of that, but that is relatively insignificant by comparison.
Well, the way I look at it is, there's a number of different ways to work this out. Like, you could say, like, if you want to come up with answers, if you don't believe that there is angels and demons and God, and it's all just material stuff and whatever, the known universe type of stuff, then either all of these encounters with craft and such, that's all nuts and bolts. All of the paranormal type stuff is BS, or that you would say all of the ancient accounts are aliens, and it's all nuts and bolts craft and aliens with high tech, right? Or you go with the idea that the spirit realm, quote unquote, gods, angels, demons, all that stuff actually exists. And so all of the UFO stuff is actually miraculous or supernormal, supernatural occurrences. So none of it's actually aliens. It's or it's a combination of both. So if the supernatural realm, spirits, fairies, all that kind of stuff exists, and magic or occult practices are real, and they actually do stuff, and you can channel, and there's aliens with nuts and bolts craft. Those aliens are also living in a world where there are angels and demons and witchcraft
and serpents.
Yeah. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So it's like that's kind of where I'm at, because I believe in the supernatural. And again, I've gone over the way I define that. I don't know. It's part of the universe. So whether it's God or angels and demons, these are still beings that happen to exist, right? If they do, they're part of the universe. But there's also aliens that are physical beings that also, if they're intelligent, they're connected to that otherworldly type, the spirit realm as well. So it's like, it's both.
See, what I'm trying to do is I feel that instead of doing what hundreds or potentially thousands of scientists in the past have looked at the phenomenon over the top edge of their glasses for 5 minutes, and then they just make a proclamation and say, "Oh, it's just this thing," just misinterpret. In other words, but realistically, they haven't even scratched the surface of the data from which to even express an opinion. It's condescending. It's saying all of you are idiots and I know everything. And I don't want to do that. So
screw those guys.
Right. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to present as much data as possible, and disparate data that has facets that no one even ever considered might be a part of this picture, to where we can look at all of this and we can speculate and we can theorize and falsify. In other words, like, for example, let's say the concept of alcohol, it's all aliens. The aliens are pretending to be gods and spirits and all this to deceive us. Okay, so we look at that scenario and we say, okay, what are the odds that all of these different races, because they appear as multiple different types, right? So what are the odds that all of these different races of beings are coming here from somewhere out there in the universe, but they all have the same agenda? They all hide their, or are very cautious not to reveal themselves. They breathe our air. I guess they're not subject to getting our viruses or anything like that. In other words, there are arguments, and I know there's going to be counter arguments to those, but for every theory, there's a counter, right? So
right, yeah.
My what I'm attempting to do is to present all the data, not only the data that fits a specific outcome. I'm trying to present all the data and let the listeners decide for themselves what makes most sense. Rather than me coming in here and telling you what to think, I'm providing you with the data so that you can come up with your own, definition of what these things could be.
Well, it's not working, because I have no idea what it all is.
I don't either.
I think that's the point. I was going to say what makes most sense is the conclusion that it doesn't make any sense.
Right.
That's what I keep getting hung up on, the idea that like if there are actual intelligent physical beings from another planet that are coming here in craft, and there's also paranormal activity that is like some weird otherworld aspect to our universe that has beings and intelligences in it that are non-physical, then the aliens are also dealing with those.
Yeah, didn't we say that on Sarai, one of the Where Did the Road Go? Like the ETs finally show up and land. And we're like, so you guys were all those weird lights, all these UFOs? And they're like, actually, no, we see those on our planet too. We have no idea what they are.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm saying.
We were hoping you guys might have figured some stuff out on what that is.
And another...
It's not mutually exclusive is my point. Yeah. It's like you're presenting all this stuff, and the idea is that like a lot of these, what people thought were spiritual encounters were actually connected to the UFO phenomena, or you could look at it the other way around, that the UFO phenomena is actually more like these spiritual encounters. They're not mutually exclusive. Like, one could actually have been a spiritual encounter that has nothing to do with UFOs.
That's what the Chains to the Sea book and an analogy that I used, that's sort of what that was suggesting. In other words, it's not one thing, it's layers of things. There, in that book, there were aliens. There were these amorphous aliens that they couldn't even count them. They said because they kept changing. They would blend together and then they would split apart, or they would, they would change shape. They said they couldn't determine how many there actually were. And then there was the AI aspect that was also in effect working with the aliens against humanity. And then there were the others that were these spirits. Effectively, they were like spirits that only a certain percentage of the population could perceive. Yet the aliens and the AI couldn't perceive them at all. So it was a very complex scenario.
The other thing is, a person that's in the spiritual camp could make the case that all of this is spiritual activity, because if spirits can manifest visions and things in people, then, or actually appear physically, then it could all be that.
Well,
or you could be firmly in the nuts and bolts camp and just say, well, their technology is such that they can communicate telepathically and they can make you see stuff. And
the spiritual side,
I just don't think that there's a way to really.
The spiritual side
There's no way to pick one.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
When I said, I used that, statement, I said, we've all seen movies that start with the finishing scene, with the ending scene, and then they go back in time. And I said, maybe we have something like that now, because if there's any validity to it, if we look at the Book of Enoch and that story, it effectively is telling us what we're seeing now, because it describes very much the same things that we're seeing now. It's saying, look, the
couple of giants
spirits
show up in his living room.
It's not telling you what it is, though.
No, it's not telling you what it is. It's saying they're angels, that these were the progeny of angels that turned into spirits, and
but that's just like somebody from today just saying, like, well, they're aliens that came from a different planet. They have no way of knowing that.
But
it's
also,
just what they've decided it means.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
also,
Enoch is writing down, like, these are angels that came from God. He doesn't know that.
No.
But he's describing a similar encounter. That's the point.
Yeah.
That's the data point you have to pay attention to. What Enoch says they are and where they come from is just as immaterial as what a modern nuts and bolts guy says they are. Right. It's their interpretation. Like, today they would say, well, it's an alien that came from a distant planet using a nuts and bolts craft. Back then, it's angels coming from God. Neither one of those interpretations are what we need to take in, but it's the similarity.
The Collins elite claimed that through their interactions, not investigation, through their interactions with them, that they came to the conclusion that they were demonic spirits pretending to be aliens from another planet.
Yeah.
That was their conclusion after dealing with them for apparently decades.
Now, that's the kind of stuff it's hard for me to swallow, the accounts from these groups of people who,
but you have
air quotes, are studying stuff by channeling shit. I'm just like,
there is historical record that validates what they're saying in terms of Operation Often. The CIA funded their documentation to support that.
Yeah,
that they were investigating.
I don't think he's saying that the investigations didn't take place or that the groups don't exist. He's just saying, like, well, I don't buy their conclusions.
Oh,
Why
yeah,
should we?
right. Yeah, maybe they're mistaken, but that was another subtle point, and I mentioned this earlier, that there were things written into Deconstructing Demons that were purposely not going to make sense until the second listen, because I'm in our discussion about the Collins elite, I mentioned that the Collins elite showed Ray Boucher pictures of people that had been killed from the interactions. Those are very likely the people that Gary Nolan was studying at the end of the episode.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Gary
the people
Nolan,
that he said that whose brains were changed by their encounters, and some of them died. They were detrimental. The brain changes were detrimental. He's saying that
25% of the 25% of the people that they studied that they had their brain scans, who were all from in the military, who had encounters with UFOs. 25% of them died. And Ray Boucher was shown pictures of 3 individuals who were killed by the phenomenon. At the point when the Collins elite is telling him this, you're like, yeah, right. I don't buy that for a second. You know, it doesn't sound, because you go, people killed by a UFO. I've never heard that. You know,
Yeah.
It doesn't sound credible. But then at the end of the episode, we find out that here this world-renowned PhD is telling us, yes, we have the brain scans. This is true. There were people killed by this.
But it may have taken a while.
Yes,
They weren't like killed on site.
right. We don't know the specifics.
Yeah.
But
But it's like
Ray Boucher
it's
was
like
shown
radiation
pictures.
poisoning.
Right.
You walk past a radioactive object and you're fine maybe for months.
You know,
But eventually you die, and it's because of that thing.
And then again, the other point that I think can't be stressed enough, that the Department of Defense and the NSA and CIA and all these other 3-letter agencies do not invest money into things for the sake of information. They're doing it to take advantage of it
Yeah.
in some way. They want to militarize it.
Yeah, they want to weaponize it
Right.
or something. Yeah.
The other possibility is that they create a whole bureaucracy to trick other intelligence agencies.
That's an aspect we'll be covering that in the next episode.
In other words, we're going to get to that.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's a whole huge. I can't wait, because if you think you've heard some crazy stuff in the past, what are we at now? 7 episodes, 8 episodes? I've already lost track. Just wait till the next one. This is when the real.
I don't think
stuff's gonna come.
I don't come from a position of thinking, oh, when the government spends a shit ton of money on something, they really need it for whatever. No, they spend so much money on so much BS. So that's not a good argument.
I think sometimes we're led to believe that. Sometimes, like when they say, oh, they spent $500 on a toilet or something, that's because that's the way they carried it on the books. That doesn't mean the $500 actually went to that
Are
toilet.
you saying the government spends all their money wisely?
No, I'm
Get
not
outta here.
saying that. Definitely not saying that. But there's a book called Blank Check. Can't remember the name of the author. It's a very
I'm just
large
trying
book.
to. I'm only making the point that trying to say when the government spends a lot of money on something,
It must be really
it must be really important.
No,
My
no,
answer
no.
to you is
Oh, no,
no.
no,
That is not an argument.
Definitely not. And yeah, I'm not saying that, but these were programs. Some of these were programs that went on for decades. And,
Not surprising.
I don't generally the ones that don't bear fruit don't last too long. Doesn't mean that a lot of times they're taking.
Sorry, I'm gonna get.
All right.
Gonna have to edit that one out.
Cut that out.
Yeah, I guess I would just say it suggests that there may have been something there. There weren't, and we know from the statements of now multiple individuals that these people actually have influence in Washington. They actually killed programs because they felt that they were messing with something that should not be messed with at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's hard for me to, like, on the one hand, I understand that thinking, but on the other hand, I'm like, screw that. If it's in the universe and you're gonna be interacting with it anyway, understanding it is exactly what we need to do.
Well, I'm just restate this. I've said it many times, but I'm going to restate it. It is not the government's orchestrating the secrecy. It's the phenomenon.
Oh, yeah. I completely
If
agree
the
with
phenomenon wanted us to know, it would reveal itself.
that. Yep.
It's doing it in a certain way for
Yeah, the
some
government.
reason.
The government's just being secretive about its own actions regarding the phenomena. It isn't covering the phenomena up.
Right, and it
can't.
It may be constrained. We don't know.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of crazy stories about deals made, and this is something going back to at least World War II.
It's the Nazis in Antarctica, man.
Could be those guys too.
There is historical precedent for that. Not necessarily the Antarctica part, but the Nazi stuff and as far as the cult ritual side and all that, that's something that we're going to touch on in the next episode.
Okay.
Governments have been involved in this for longer than what they admit.
Yeah, especially when you consider that governments used to be, what do they call it? They were basically religions pretending to be governments. So it was like...
Or governments pretending to be religions, whichever way you want to put it.
Yeah, whatever way you want to...
From some of the stuff I was reading earlier...
So it's like, it's been... In other words, that's been governments from the very beginning.
Yeah.
To give you an idea how sometimes reality can be counter...
Theocracy? What was that?
Yeah,
Is that
theocracy,
can be counter to the perception. You know that a lot of the stuff you see on television between government, officials...
No, I don't watch
it's
television.
often... Right, but it's a lot of it's posturing. I was reading about some projects, and some of this stuff was like from the early 2000s up to at least 2010, and it was talking about these advanced technologies. Some of the stuff we'll be talking in the next episode, and surprisingly, the U.S. government was working with the Chinese on these projects, who are allegedly our arch enemies.
Yeah,
but yet we're working on this advanced technology together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Not surprising. Not surprising. Well, what is surprising is with, 3 hours now?
Yep.
Another 3-hour bonus-ode from Marty. It's been a great conversation.
Yeah,
I think we ought to wrap it up.
Yeah, agreed.
Yep.
Yeah, so thanks, Marty, for coming back.
We gotta thank some people.
We do. We do have to thank some people.
Thanks to Marty for coming back.
Yeah.
Number one.
Always enjoy coming up here. You know that.
I was not prepared for you. Want to pause it while I get my...
Sure, yeah. Hold on a second. I'll go edit that comment out real quick.
All right. Thanks for pausing it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a new policy at the end of the month. We go through our Patreon to get associate executive and executive producers, because some people are up at the level there. So we have Daniel Gandy at $43.20 a month. That's an associate executive producer. Thank you so much. And then at the Ascended Snake Force, where is it? Yes.
Ascended Snake Force Master.
Executive producers for this month: Peter Shell, Zachariah Baker, and Frank M. all coming in at the $72 a month donations on Patreon. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much.
Did you have some in the...
Nope.
No?
No, none in the PayPal.
Okay. Anything else? What else were we supposed to do?
That was the only note. So...
All right. Well, you guys can get a hold of us, brothersoftheserpent@gmail.com. If you write a UFO-related email, I'll try to save it so we can talk to Marty about it. But those were good. Some of them I was saving up for months. brothersoftheserpent.com, website for all the podcast-related stuff. And if you want to join the pyramid scheme, help us out. Send us straight to pyramids. We got many trips planned. That really helps us out, supports the show. And thanks to all of you who've done that. We really appreciate it, but you can do it through Patreon or PayPal, and there are links for that on the website. Also, crypto, if you want to do that. We got crypto wallet addresses on there. And join the Discord. Be nice in the chats. Do what the admins say. No, usually, not always. Some of the admins, you should definitely not do what they say. Thanks to Jeff, who runs the Discord.
Just undermine their authority. That was a joke by Russ.
That's right.
Do what they say.
Thanks to History Shift, who makes all of our YouTube videos. And thanks to Marty for coming out.
Yeah, buddy.
Really appreciate that.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Enjoyed it.
Thanks to all you listeners out there. We love you guys.
Always have.
Always will.
Good night, Adamu, and Happy New Year.
And get back to work.
Get back to work.